The night air outside Storm's End was perfumed with salt from the narrow sea and heavy with the tension of two brothers poised to decide the fate of a kingdom. Torches guttered around Renly Baratheon's sprawling encampment, their flames casting restless shadows across silk pavilion walls embroidered with the golden stag of his claim. Inside the largest tent, Renly sat in thoughtful silence, legs crossed beneath a table strewn with carved weirwood figures. Tiny stags, roses, and shields painted the green of the reach. He studied them as if they were living men arrayed on a battlefield yet to be fought. Candlelight gleamed along the polished antlers of his crown. Loras Tyrell stood nearby, helm beneath his arm, the plume of dawn-pink feathers drooping in the damp. He watched his king with a gaze that blended worship and worry. "Your Grace," Loras said at last, voice hushed so the guards outside would not hear the tremor beneath his steadiness. "Dawn approaches. Scouts say Stannis has broken camp and advances beneath no banners but his fiery heart. He comes fast." Renly twirled one of the carved stags between thumb and forefinger. "Then he comes as he has always marched, grim, humorless, and convinced of righteousness. I shall meet him where the ground favors horsemen. Let him gnash his teeth as he likes, summer will canter across his grim gray sternness." His smile was quicksilver, bright one instant, gone the next. "Tell Ser Gaillard to ready the vanguard. And see Brienne fed. She hasn't left her armor in 2 days." Outside, campfires crackled while men-at-arms tightened girths on destriers draped in green and gold. The soft clatter of steel and whisper of leather mixed with murmured prayers to the Seven, to the Mother for mercy, to the Warrior for strength, and, among distant, darker enclaves, to the Lady Melisandre's Lord of Light, though none would admit it here. Farther off, the Tyrell tents shimmered like pale flowers under moonlight. Bannermen from the Stormlands, Tarth, Estermont, Dondarrion, shared ale with Highgarden knights whose cloaks smelled of apple blossoms rather than sea spray. Brienne of Tarth emerged from her own modest shelter, visor raised, face pale but eyes burning blue. She walked as though the weight of her armor was less than the weight of her promise, to keep Renly safe until this war was won. Catelyn Stark observed her from the periphery, who'd drawn low, a silent witness sent to parley peace yet finding herself binder of oaths to men who scorned the very notion of compromise. The Lady of Winterfell watched the bustle, wondering which part of the world would shatter next. Beyond the ring of torches, the sky softened from jet to cobalt. A sea breeze bent the tall banners, carrying the distant thunder of drums from Stannis' march. Renly mounted a white courser, armor of green steel catching first blush of dawn, crown glimmering like summer lightning. He rode before his host, voice rising above restless hooves. "Stormlords and bright roses of the Reach," he called. "We ride not only for a throne, but for the lightness of laughter and the warmth of harvest, for the safe roads that join our hearths to one another. We ride for a realm where meat is sweet, wine is red, and the hand around your shoulder is not a mailed fist." Cheers rolled across the ranks, hungry cheers, the cheers of youths who believed their king's mirth could not be slain. Loras raised his sword, the gemstones in its pommel scattering dawn into a spray of restless stars. Behind him rose Randall Tarly, grim yet loyal under the rose banner, then Mathis Rowan, bold as copper in sunlight, and Gaillard Morrigan, cool-eyed, silent. Garland Tyrell rode with the heavy foot, his laughter echoing as loud as any trumpet. On the other side of the field, Stannis appeared like an iron nail hammered through morning mist. Dour, uncompromising, armored in plain steel and stubborn silence. The fiery heart of the Lord of Light blazed across his breast. Above it, a crown of stag's horns declared his birthright, though the steel seemed heavier on him than on Renly. At his flank rode Lord Valerion, sea-gray cloak snapping like a banner, and Ser Davos, fingers few but honor whole. Melisandre was nowhere seen, yet the men eyed the shadows, recalling whispers of things born of darkness. Trumpets wailed. The world leapt forward. Renly's horned knights crashed like a green tide upon Stannis' shield wall. Dirt surged into the air, cloaking steel in russet. Renly felt hooves shudder beneath him, heard within his helm the deep thrum of life, his own heartbeat, his horses, the roar of thousands. He cleaved through a line of men bearing the fiery heart, his stag helm scattering embers where it struck. For an instant Renly glimpsed his brother across the maelstrom. Stannis' jaw clenched, eyes alight with the terrible blaze of certainty. They might have locked together then, Baratheon against Baratheon, but a knot of spearmen swirled between, and the moment was gone like a swallowed breath. Morning lengthened. The sun spilled gold across churned earth. At Renly's right, Loras carved a path, horse dancing among foes. At his left, Brienne shattered a standard-bearer's ribs, her war cry startling even those who fought beside her. Yet Stannis' line held. Twice Renly's cavalry wheeled back, their charge blunted by hedges of pikes and the grim resolve of men who believed their cause anointed by a fiery god. Then the wind shifted, dragging with it the acrid tang of burning pitch and a stranger scent, coppery and hot, like blood boiled under a forge. Men faltered, gazes flitting to the shadows cast by their own bodies. Whispers of a black-souled shadow with a king's face slid through the ranks, but the shadow did not come. Brienne felt eyes upon her yet saw nothing but the brilliance of day. Whatever dark magic Melisandre birthed in the bowels of Storm's End had been stifled by wards placed in secret. The old maester at Evenstar, learning of queer doings, had sent Raven to the Red Wine Fleet, and Lord Paxter had delivered strange glass candles to Renly's camp. Whether the tales proved truth or fancy, the truth was evident now. No shadow rose, no breath of king's blood turned against its owner. When the Tyrell trumpets sounded a third time, Rowan's infantry pressed Stannis' right flank. Garland Tyrell dismounted to fight among foot, his blade like a river's flash in sunlight. Dornish spears hired by Renly slid under heavy shields, pricking apart the seam of the line. With a thunderous cheer, the sellswords of the Stormlands broke through, and suddenly the field belonged to Renly. Stannis' bannermen shrank around their lord. Shrill curses flew, a knight of Florent colors surrendered. Another of Fell sought to break free and fell beneath Renly's own sword. The fiery heart shimmered on folded banners as captains knelt. Defeat lay heavy as iron. Stannis remained astride his destrier, jaw clenched so tight his beard bristled white at the edges. He refused the calls to yield until Lord Davos placed a hand upon his bridle and whispered something only a smuggler might dare speak to a would-be king. Stannis' shoulders sagged. He raised gauntlet hands. Enough. I yield the field. A hush chased the wind's howl, then a roar of triumph rose around Renly. Prisoners were gathered under watch of Storm's End men. Stannis' crown was taken but treated with honor. Renly would not stoop to mocking victory. He approached his brother as the sun rode high, sweat-slick and blood-splashed, but smile as bright as banners in spring. I would have shared a table with you, brother, Renly said, voice soft. Now I shall share bread and salt in your captivity until you remember that laughter lives inside this house we share. Stannis' stare was flint. Laughter is for feasts, he said. A king must wield justice. His gaze swept the field of corpses and broken spears. I see little justice here. You see the cost of stubborn pride. Renly extended a hand. Stannis refused it. Renly sighed. Very well. You'll ride south with me all the same. I'll not leave you to Melisandre's devices. At the rear of Stannis' columns, the Red Woman regarded events through shuttered lids, her face unreadable. Some swore the ruby at her throat dimmed as if a coal's core withdrew its heat. Others claimed it flared brighter when she turned away. No one saw her slip into the trees before nightfall. Renly spent the evening beneath green silk, broth simmering over campfires, the scent of rosemary, onion, and victory weaving through the darkness. He shared wine with Mace Tyrell, whose booming laughter shook the banners, and listened to Olenna's quiet suggestions about crown finances, reminding him that soldiers marched on silver as readily as on honor. Catelyn Stark requested audience and, with the patience of Riverstones, pressed the matter of Robb's claim to the north. Renly promised safe passage and words of alliance once the Iron Throne was his. Yet amid the revel he felt the emptiness that lingered in triumph. Stannis' silence weighed upon him heavier than any crown. When Renly visited his brother's tent under cover of starlight, he found Davos kneeling in prayer and Stannis sitting rigid upon a camp stool. No chains bound him, but his surrender bound him more tightly than iron. Renly spoke first, voice low. We were not always foes, brother. Stannis' gaze flicked to the candles. Were we not? Robert loved you for your smiles. He loved me for my sense, so I thought, until he gave Storm's End to you and Dragonstone's bleak halls to me. I have worn jealousy like mail all my life. He breathed, harsh and ragged. But you were still alive. That is something. Alive and victorious, yes. Renly knelt so their eyes met. Come with me to King's Landing. Help me shape a realm worth the blood spilled today. There's room in my councils for a brother who speaks hard truths. Stannis' lips twitched, not quite a sneer, not quite surrender. We'll speak in the capital if we reach it. Fate may yet twist your triumph into ruin. Behind them Davos rose, silent, steady. He nodded to Renly as one mariner nods to the harbor light, respectful, cautious, understanding storms yet to come. At dawn the host of summer and storm rolled south, banners unfurled in a green and gold river. Scouts rode ahead to clear the road of Cersei's spies. Renly placed Brienne at the head of his personal guard. Loras rode beside him, handsome as a tourney knight, though dust already blurred the silver phones etched on his vambrace. Somewhere within the baggage train, Stannis rode flanked by a double line of reach men. He said nothing as fields rolled past, but his eyes drank every farmstead and hedgerow as though he memorized the realm he had failed to claim. Small folk emerged from orchards and spinneys to gape at the procession. They cheered when they saw Renly's crown, they flung apples and wheaten rolls to soldiers with impish smiles. In every village, old women curtsied and whispered that summer might never end. Renly gave coin, bright copper pennies that bore his stag upon one side and a blooming rose upon the other, newly minted in Highgarden's forges. The coins clinked like laughter in worn leather pouches. 3 days out, the column reached Bitterbridge. Lords Tarly and Rowan took wine in the stone keep while Renly held council in the feast hall. Maps were unrolled across the trestle tables, the Rose Road running straight and true to King's Landing, the Blackwater swelling near the city walls, and, beyond that, Lannister Red within the Holdfast's towers. "If we march hard," said Randyll Tarly, tapping the map, "we reach the city before the lioness expects. The gold cloaks will open the gates if shown strength." Mace Tyrell puffed his cheeks. "My daughter is queen. She can smooth the way." Renly sipped Arbor Red. "Perhaps. Yet I recall Cersei as a woman who trusts only her own brood, and then hardly that. She would sooner feed her guards to lions than yield to me." Garland traced a finger over the river. "We could seize the Blackwater crossings ahead of her levies. With Stannis' fleet, that is, what remains of it, we control the bay. Sail and siege together will break the city's spine." Renly glanced at Catelyn Stark seated in quiet shadow. "And what, dear lady, do you counsel?" She folded her hands. "Kings rise and fall like summer storms. My counsel is to secure peace before your thunder reaches Riverrun. Robb is king in the north whether the Iron Throne claims it or not. Bend with the wind now and you may spare thousands later." Renly bowed his head. "Before I sit the Iron Throne, I will summon Robb south to treat. If he will not come, I shall ride to the Trident to meet him when the crown is firm on my brow." Such promises satisfied no one entirely, yet offended few enough that the host rolled onward the next dawn. The closer they drew to the capital, the more anxious Renly's dreams became, visions of a shadow's hand closing about his throat, of Stannis standing atop the Red Keep in golden armor, of wildfire blossoming across Blackwater Bay. He woke each morning shivering, despite the balmy air, and called for fresh water to wash the dread from his eyes. On the 7th day, outriders returned with dire tidings. Ser Balon Swan, long thought lost to Lannister fealty, had been sighted escorting wagons of wildfire into the city under Giles Rosby's seal. The alchemists of the guild had stoked their furnaces to a fever pitch. Cersei meant to turn the Blackwater into a green inferno should any host attempt crossing. Renly gathered his council beneath a canvas pavilion striped green and rose. "So the Mad King's daughter prepares his favorite torches," he murmured, fingers steepled. "What say you, Loras? Shall we dance with wildfire? Best to strike before the guild grows bold," Loras replied. "A swift assault at dusk." Catelyn shook her head. "Wildfire is treacherous. Water feeds it. Wind spreads it. Thousands of innocents would burn." Randyll Tarly grimaced. "Then surround the city, starve them, and let the small folk open the gates." "But time breeds plague and treachery alike," Garland warned. "The lioness will send ravens to her father. Soon enough hosts from the west ride to her aid." Renly stared at the map. A new plan unfolded within his thoughts, delicate yet daring. "We shall not cross the Blackwater," he said slowly. "We shall cross the crowns of men." He dispatched birds to the city, promising pardons and honors, coin and grain, to any gold cloak or merchant guild master who swore to open the Lion Gate when his standard was seen upon the hill of Rhaenys' Hill. Another raven flew to Balon Swan, reminding him of oaths once sworn to Renly's foster father, Jon Arryn. Within the hour, ravens beat from the Tyrell encampment like leaves caught in an updraft. That night, as stars pricked the velvet sky, Renly walked the picket line, speaking quiet words to common men. Tales of feasts yet to come, of orchards planted anew, of sons who would not bleed on strange battlefields when this war was ended. Men swore they would follow him through wildfire and worse. Some kissed his hand, others pressed tokens into his palm. A mother's ribbon, a lucky stone, a child's drawing of a stag. He kept them all. In his own tent, Stannis waited. Guards parted to admit Renly. The elder Baratheon sat with his wrists resting on his knees, unchained yet unmoving, eyes bleak with storms. "I heard your counsel," he said before Renly spoke. "Plots and bribes. You trade honor for chance. Often chance is the only coin war will take," Renly answered. He sank onto a camp stool opposite. "March with me tomorrow. Stand beside me upon Rhaenys' hill. Let the realm see two brothers reconciled." Stannis looked away. "Do you know what Melisandre promised? That smoke and salt would birth a dragon of darkness to devour your sunlit dreams. She bid me trust the flame. Yet here I sit and the shadows obey some other musings." Renly studied him in silence. "There are no dragons left, brother. Only men and choices." Stannis' jaws worked but no words came. At length he lifted his eyes. "I will stand beside you," he said, "but one day I shall speak the truths you will not." Renly clasped his hand. "We will hear them together." Near midnight, a rider from the vanguard arrived breathless. The gold cloaks upon the King's Road had taken bribes enough. 500 now waited near the Blackwater's ferry to defect. Renly sent Garland Tyrell ahead with coin and assurances. By dawn pale smoke rose from their campfires, smoke without flames, a sign arranged with Swan. The host advanced at sunrise. Drums rolled. The Rose Road narrowed between vineyards and plowed fields heavy with early grain. Peasants watched from furrows, their faces bright with hope or shuddered with fear. Over the last ridge came the first clear glimpse of King's Landing, its walls red gold in the morning light, domes and spires thrusting toward a sky streaked violet and rose. Above the gate rippled the crowned stag of House Baratheon, and beside it, to Renly's astonishment, the golden rose of Highgarden. A laugh burst from his lips. Loras shouted exultation. The host broke into applause as Renly urged his white courser ahead. Upon the rampart stood Ser Balon Swan, helm and crook of arm, and a cluster of gold cloaks unclasping lion badges from their cloaks. Yet deeper within the city, smoke twisted in strange green tongues. Renly felt his blood chill. Somewhere, pyromancers kindled wildfire. The lioness would not yield her cub without claws. He raised hand to halt his vanguard. Only the first step, he murmured to Loras. "Now we must show the realm a king whose weapon is mercy." He beckoned Brienne. "Ride with me. If wildfire blooms, we shall ride straight through flame to safety or to death and live in song either way." Brienne bowed head, voice low. "I will not leave you while I draw breath." The portcullis groaned open. Renly entered the city as horns sang his triumph and bells began their peal. Flowers rained from windows, mingling with ash drifting on the breeze. Somewhere to the west, a lion roared. And atop the red keep, hidden from all eyes, Queen Cersei knelt before a wrought iron helm snarling with dragon's fangs, some relic of Maegor or perhaps only theater for a frightened mother. In her hands, a single jar of wildfire glowed. "Let them come," she whispered, voice breaking. "Let them burn." Her green eyes shone with tears or perhaps reflections of the poison she cradled. Thus ended the first march, but the Game of Thrones had only begun its next turn. The memory of summer's laughter rode at Renly's back, yet the shadow of a mother's fury curled before him like a dragon of green flame. In the city's twisting alleys, urchins sang of a new king dressed in sunlight, while spies hurried to ravens with tidings for a lion in the west and a wolf in the north. Far across the sea, a girl with silver hair dreamed of black wings blotting out the stars. Night settled over King's Landing, ushering in an uneasy peace. Renly stood on a balcony overlooking the Blackwater, breeze tugging soft at his sable mantle. The river shimmered, jeweled with reflected lanterns, and somewhere deep beneath flowed currents as dark as the oaths men swore. He breathed deeply, tasting salt, sit, and the faintest promise of roses from the reach. Behind him, Loras spoke his name, gentle, questioning. Renly closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would sit the Iron Throne. Tomorrow he would forge a crown from laughter and light. Tonight, he let the hush embrace him, holding the weight of victory like a chalice brimful of dreams and dread alike. And far below, the waters whispered the same word again and again in the lap of small waves against stone. King, king, king. The noon sun hung high over King's Landing like a molten coin, flattening the city's rooftops beneath a haze of heat and dust. Market stalls along the muddy stretch of the Fishmonger's Square fell silent as Renly Baratheon's banners streamed through the Lion Gate, a green and gold procession that seemed to paint the very air in summer hues. Children scampered alongside the column, their bare feet kicking up motes of dust that sparkled in the light. Bakers abandoned ovens still glowing with coals to peer at the young king in his gleaming armor, while washerwomen on balconies above let linens flutter like sudden truce flags. Renly rode at the head, Loras Tyrell at his left hand. Brienne of Tarth at his right, and behind them a bloom of Reach knights whose polished helms flashed blinding glares of midday brilliance. The newcomers smelled of horse sweat, leather, and crushed rose petals. The existing garrison, the gold cloaks who had thrown open the gates at the promise of coin and clemency, watched somewhat warily, uncertain whether their new allies would soon become rivals. More than one city watch captain clasped hands behind his back in an effort to hide the tremor of nerves. The free cities rarely saw armies so disciplined, so jubilant. King's Landing had not seen one in living memory. Within the Red Keep, Queen Cersei Lannister perched like a golden hawk on the balcony of Maegor's Holdfast, her eyes narrowed against the glare. The wildfire jar in her clasped hands pulsed with soft green light, its viscous contents shifting like a thing half alive. Pyromancers had assured her the jar would not break without significant shock, yet they had confessed, with the nervous humility of men who understood how quickly confidence could become ashes, that wildfire answered to no forge save the secret heat trapped in its own green heart. If dropped from this height, they said, it might consume not only the courtyard below but perhaps ignite the caches stored deep under Rhaenys' hill. The Red Keep itself could become a torch in the sky and all her enemies would burn. So, perhaps with Joffrey, yet a mother's panic is a kind of madness. She imagined rather than saw the faces of her enemies. Renly's merry grin, Tyrell's smiles fresh as dew, Varys's placid expression hiding God's knew what laughter, and Littlefinger's sharp fox eyes flicking from coin to coin. She thought of Tyrion too, bitterly, that imp who had vanished toward the west with promises to bring Tywin's host to heel. He had not returned. All men lied to her eventually. Even Jaime, her twin, remained prisoner beyond the twins, kept from her by a she-wolf and a boy who called himself king. Inside the cavernous hall of the King's Guard, Joffrey stood on a dais, flanked by soldiers who shifted uneasily. Horses screamed beyond the gatehouses. Bells tolled, their peals overlapping in cacophonous jubilation that made the boy king press palms to his ears. They cheer for me, he insisted to anyone who might protest. I am their rightful king. Maester Pycelle bowed again and again in servile agreement, yet the old man's watery eyes slid sidelong at every distant cheer. In truth, the bells rang because Renly commanded them rung, and the watch obeyed, but Joffrey's pride was a brittle thing, and his mother forbade contradicting him. She left him there, feeding on illusions, while she considered how swiftly illusions could shatter when wildfire kissed stone. Atop Aegon's high hill, Renly reined in before the wide slope that led to the Red Keep's main gates. He dismounted in a flourish of green silk, his boots squelching against dust turned to clay by spilt water barrels overturned in the garrison's haste to dampen stray sparks. He handed the reins to a squire and climbed 3 marble steps, his shadow long upon the dusty approach. With him stood Loras, Brienne, and Garland Tyrell. Randall Tarley waited a pace behind, stern as a forgotten verdict. The gold-cloak captain who had betrayed Cersei, Saralard Mallory, knelt before Renly, offering up the keys to the city gates. Renly accepted with a bright smile, but handed them at once to Brienne, bidding her keep the realm's door barred against cruelty. Brienne flushed crimson, lips parting in surprise before she bowed with stiff grace. The crowd pressed closer, curious. Small folk gaped at the tall knight in sapphire armor and the florid beauty of the Knight of Flowers. They whispered stories that traveled faster than carts along the Rose Road, that Renly had defeated his grim brother upon the field at dawn, that he had mercy in one hand and laughter in the other, that he would restore bread to tables where children gnawed candle wax for want of crusts. These stories grew taller with each retelling. Some claimed Renly carried a horn of plenty beneath his cloak, others that his queen-to-be could coax roses to bloom upon bare rock. A pot-bellied cooper outside the Hook swore he'd glimpsed the Red Woman fleeing into the Blackwater with a tail of smoke. No one questioned such tales. Folks in King's Landing tasted fear with every morning's bread and would swallow hope if offered in equal measure. Renly raised his voice, not a bellow, but the kind of easy amplitude that made a hall hush to catch his words. People of King's Landing, he called, your king returns, bringing peace. The echo rippled down the broad slope, across rows of gawking onlookers, through the smell of tallow smoke and horse droppings. I swear by the 7 that each man who lays down arms shall have pardon. Every baker who lights his oven shall find flour delivered before the next dawn. Each child shall know a belly filled before the next moon. When the harvest carts roll in, no lord shall tax more than the law of the land permits, 10%, no more, no matter the colors on his standard. He paused there, letting the promise hang. The silence stretched a heartbeat, then too. Somewhere a child clapped. Another followed. Soon applause swept through the crowd in a wave of clacking spoons, tapping staves, and raucous cheers. It was thin as the folk themselves, yet it warmed the afternoon. Loras's face glowed at the reaction. He leaned near and murmured, "Bast we stride up the hill, your grace, before the lioness regroups." Renly nodded. He signaled forward the Tyrell and Stormlander banners, letting them flow like twin rivers ahead of his retinue. They mounted the marble path past the King's Gate and across the drawbridge of the Red Keep. Archers atop the ramparts watched but loosed no arrows. The watchers weighed fear against coin and found fear wanting. In the outer bailey a hush fell when the royal party dismounted. Lalan Swan, a cousin of Balan's, stepped from a side door, helm under his arm. He knelt and surrendered a sheaf of parchment, rosters of the watch, caches of arms, and the locations of wildfire barrels known to the city watch. Renly accepted and gave them to Randall Tarley with a crooked grin. "There's your evening's work, my lord. Seal the Alchemist's Guild halls. Post Tyrell men at every cellar named on that list. If a mouse so much as squeaks near a wildfire jar, I want 3 swords to answer." Tarley's lips flattened in approval. He appreciated straightforward commands. He stalked off, barking orders to his bannermen, who in turn propelled squads of spearmen into motion, their mail rattling like sacks of silver coins. Renly entered the Red Keep's echoing corridors, boots tapping stone. He passed a tapestry depicting King Aegon astride Balerion, his dragon's jaws spewing black fire across a field. Renly paused just long enough to murmur, "Even kings made of conquest answer to time." Loras glanced at him sideways but said nothing. Within the throne room, the Iron Throne reared beneath a lattice of torchlight. Joffrey had tried to stand before it like a sentinel of his own reign, yet the approach of Renly's banners made his courage ebb as quickly as a spring tide. Now he waited halfway down the hall, Pycelle at his shoulder, a cluster of Lannister guards hemming him in. The air smelled of dust, burning torches, and the faint musky odor of fear. Renly's spurs rang as he strode between charred columns. He halted a respectful sword's length away and offered a sweeping bow, more actor than warrior in that moment. "Your Grace," he said softly. Joffrey attempted hauteur, but his voice came out shrill. "I am king. Mother says so. Grandfather says so. My blood is royal." Renly's smile was gentle. "Royal blood flows in many veins, dear nephew." He lifted a hand toward the throne, jagged, forbidding, each sword a reminder of conquest. "But the realm craves peace, not iron. Will you pledge fealty, and in so doing, keep your head where it sits?" The words were kind, yet their menace lay bare. Loras's hand rested on his hilt, Brienne's gauntlet fingers flexed. Silence hung heavy. Joffrey's eyes darted to Pycelle, then to the guards, then back. No one moved. He opened his mouth, but no words emerged. At last the boy's shoulders sagged. I shall consult the queen." A ripple of reluctant amusement spread among Renly's companions. Renly, though, nodded gravely. "Do so, but be swift. The realm's business waits for no hesitance." He swept a courteous hand, inviting Pycelle to guide the boy out. Pycelle shuffled forward, beard trembling, and half-led, half-herded Joffrey toward a side door. The two disappeared between crimson curtains, followed by 4 Lannister guards whose helms gleamed dully. Behind the throne a discreet door opened and Lord Peter Baelish emerged as though conjured by Renly's very breath. "Your Grace," Littlefinger purred, "I bring greetings from the noble council, what remains of it, and an offer to expedite any transfer of power." His smile was sly, knife-thin. Renly regarded him coolly. "Expedite? You mean profit." Baelish spread slender hands. "Profit, your Grace, is merely grease for the wheels of governance. The city bankers will wish assurances, the grain merchants expect writs, the Spice Guild must not close its purses." He stepped closer, voice quieting. "Allow me to smooth their ruffled feathers, and King's Landing will open like a rose in sunlight." Renly glanced toward Loras, whose expression soured at the mention of roses. "We shall see. For now, Master Baelish, gather the remaining council in the solar above the Tower of the Hand. I will join them shortly." He waved dismissively. Littlefinger bowed, retreating with cat-like grace, mouth curving in secret amusement. Outside, the sun dipped toward late afternoon, slanting gold across the city rooftops. From the tower balcony, Renly surveyed the maze of streets. Smoke rose from stew pots, distant voices sang of a new dawn. Yet not all hearts beat glad. In the rooftops near the Street of Sisters, a pair of cloaked figures crept from gable to gable, one tall and gaunt, the other shorter and stooped. They paused only to mark the bright flags on the ramparts, then slipped through an attic window and vanished into the warren below. Varys's little birds, perhaps, or Cersei's conspirators. King's Landing had always teemed with secrets. Renly turned away to the council chamber. The table had once belonged to Aegon the Conqueror, its legs were hewn to resemble dragon talons. Around it sat Mace Tyrell, wide as a cook's hearth and twice as warm. Lady Olenna in shaded corner, her sourdust look soaking up every small shift in posture or glance. Ser Balon Swan, uneasy yet resolute, Lord Haleen of the Alchemist's Guild, his charcoal-streaked robes giving off a faint reek of smoke. And Peter Baelish, of course, at Renly's right elbow as if he had always been there. Stannis sat opposite, under guard, his wrists unbound but resting on the table as though they were manacled by the weight of shame. Renly began by requesting an inventory of provisions, how much grain remained in flea-bottom warehouses, what tolls still flowed from Rosby and Stokeworth, how many smithies could turn to forging plowshares when swords were no longer needed. Mace blustered about harvest yields, Olenna corrected him with crisp figures. Haleen offered to supply charcloth for ovens if paid proper dues. Baelish mentioned a levy that might fill coffers. Stannis listened in growing silence, knuckles whitening. When at last he spoke, his voice was so stark it froze the room. You speak of harvests and levies while an army of lions gathers at Harrenhal. Tywin Lannister is no man of gentle strings. He marches to cutthroats, not to haggle over lists. Mace sniffed. Lord Tywin's host is distant. We hold the city. Walls don't hold against hunger, Stannis replied, nor against debts unpaid. When Tywin comes, he'll come with coin enough to buy half your banners and blades enough to hack through those who don't sell. Renly tapped the table. Thus we prepare. We muster forces from Storm's End and the Reach and secure alliances. The River Lords will see advantage in siding with a crowned Baratheon who treats with Robb Stark. The Vale may yet send eagles. As for Tywin, let him march. By the time he nears the city, only charred fields and empty granaries will greet him. Stannis snorted. A scorched earth. Your mercy shows. No, Renly said evenly. I speak of charred fields. Tywin will have to torch himself, for the harvest wagons will already be rolling here. He leaned forward. We feed our folk first. That is rule one of rule. Stannis met his gaze. After a silent heartbeat, he looked away, mouth tight. Perhaps he saw in Renly's expression the stubborn steel he'd always denied his frivolous brother. Whatever he saw, it quelled further protest for now. Olenna Tyrell lifted her cane, tapping it twice. All eyes turned. And when the lions roar, how do we tame them? Gold buys swords, yes, but Tywin also buys stories. Spread a rumor that the Reach intends to sack Lannisport and Lord Tywin must turn ear and coin to his own ground. Baelish's lips twitched. Stirring rumors is a cheap remedy. I know who might spread them. Renly cut him off with a palm raised. Enough for tonight. Lord Tarly, double the watch on wildfire sellers. Ser Balon, set half your gold cloaks to drilling and the other half to patrolling for arsonists. Lord Haleen, you're under guard as well. My thanks for your service, but no pyromancer moves unescorted while I sit this throne. Haleen bowed his frizzled head, muttering protest but not daring refusal. And Master Baelish, Renly added, you will draft a plausible schedule for taxation, mindful that treading on starving peasants crushes their bodies before their loyalty. Baelish inclined his head so deeply his nose nearly brushed the table. As you command, my king. The council dispersed. Stannis was escorted to chambers overlooking the sea, a courtesy that nonetheless boasted guards at door and window. He paused before entering, turned to Brienne who stood watch. Tell Renly I shall, in time, have words. He entered without waiting for reply. Meanwhile, Catelyn Stark visited the silent godwood within the Red Keep. She knelt before the heart tree, a slender weirwood transplanted centuries ago and kept alive by borrowed soil and unnatural spells, praying the gods of the north still recognized prayers spoken this far south. She prayed for Robb's safety, for Edmure's release, for the lives of Arya and Sansa lost to rumor's tide, and for peace if peace could be carved from so much jagged envy. She rose to find Varys waiting at the edge of the clearing, hands folded over his ample belly like a merchant of whispers. He bowed with modest grace, then offered tidings, a raven from Riverrun reporting Walder Frey's restlessness, another from Moat Cailin where ire-born sails blackened the sea. He spoke as if these were simple facts of weather. Catelyn listened, heart heavy. Late that night, Renly walked the ramparts alone, save for the distant steps of a pair of Tyrell guards who shadowed him from courtesy more than command. King's Landing sprawled below like a slumbering beast, its thousand lanterns flickering eyes. The river lapped against docks, carrying the susurrus of waves and the groan of moored ships. He thought of Robert then, Robert whose laughter shook rafters, whose temper roared louder than storms. Robert, who had made them all believe in something wild and magnificent, then left behind broken promises and empty casks. Renly wondered whether he'd ever truly known his eldest brother, or whether that knowledge mattered now that he himself wore a crown fashioned of summer leaves and golden antlers. Crown or no, the path he walked felt narrow as a drawbridge stretched over wildfire. Loras found him leaning on parapet stones still warm from day's heat. The knight's steps were quiet, though his armor chimed faintly. He stood beside Renly without speaking until Renly looked up. "You should rest," Loras said gently. "Even the youngest kings require sleep." Renly smiled. "Sleep comes easy when work is done. And so much remains undone." He gestured across the rooftops. "Only tonight do I see how large the city truly is. Each lamp below belongs to some soul with hopes and fears. Even Cersei." He shook his head. "She and I must speak soon. Yet I fear our language differs." Loras reached for Renly's hand, gloved fingers brushing mail. "She will not dare move against you now. The city loves you already. Did you hear the songs in Flea Bottom?" "I heard something akin to singing." Renly chuckled. His gaze drifted up to the stars, pricks of light amid the haze. "I also heard worry from Tarly that we've not enough knights to hold every gate. The city is porous as a sieve." He exhaled. "But tomorrow we ride the circuit of the walls. We'll display crowns, coins, and good cheer. Let the small folk know their new king respects their toil." Behind them Brienne approached, helm beneath her arm. "Your Grace," she said almost reluctantly, "I have placed 20 men at the pyromancer's main vault. Lord Haleen has provided 7 strong boxes of green jars for removal to safer cellars under guard. The rest remain sealed." Renly studied her sturdy earnestness with affection. "My lady champion, you shame me with your diligence." He clapped her shoulder lightly. "Rest then, for come dawn we ride circuits." Brienne inclined her head but lingered. "I saw a hooded figure watching the vaults from the alley of the Lemon Cloister. When confronted, he fled over rooftop. Too nimble for a common thief." Loras frowned. "Could be Varys' spy. Or Cersei's," Renly murmured. "We must be wary." He waved toward the darkness below. "Place watchers on the holdfast from rooftops not manned by Lannister men. Ensure arrows face inward as well as out." Brienne's nod was crisp. She withdrew like a sentinel carved of shadows and resolve. The next morning dawned bright but uneasy. Clouds trailed silver along the horizon, promising afternoon storms. Renly broke his fast on honey cakes and pomegranates while reading letters delivered in the night, one from Dorne expressing guarded neutrality, another from the Riverlands pledging fealty conditional on the liberation of Harrenhal, and a third from the Vale's Lord Nestor Royce, slyly hinting that young Lord Robert Arryn might proclaim loyalty if promised certain wardship honors. Renly penned replies swift as sword strikes, promising little, offering hope. Mid-morning found the royal procession winding along the city walls, trumpets heralding its approach. Crowds thronged the parapets where space allowed, waving scraps of cloth dyed green or gold. Bakers tossed heel ends to hungry children. Renly reined his white courser beneath the looming sept of Baelor and dismounted to kneel upon the temple's marble steps. A hush swept the onlookers as the High Septon, obese, breathless, but not without cunning, waddled forward to bless the new king. "Let the 7 guide your hand," he intoned, pressing a crystal vial of scented oil to Renly's brow. "May the warrior inspire courage, the mother grant compassion, the father temper justice with mercy." Inside the sept, candles blazed. Renly lingered at the altar of the mother, laying a sprig of rose as offering. He prayed not for victory but for wisdom. Something in the hush of incense-laden air stirred his heart, a memory of meadows beyond the stormlands where summer storms came soft and swift and left fields glistening, a sense that the realm was like that meadow, battered but yearning to rise green again. He rose resolved. As the procession wound north toward the dragon pit, a sudden bell's peal rang discordant from the Red Keep. Loras's head snapped up, Brienne wheeled her destrier. Renly felt a prickle along his scalp. A gold cloak galloped from the direction of the river, tabard flapping. Dust clouded his approach. He reined to a skidding halt before the king, bowed low, and rasped, "Fire, your grace, maiden vault cellar." "Ablaze." He panted, sweat coursed down a sooty cheek. "We've contained it, but alchemists claim theft. 3 wildfire jars missing." Renly's jaw tightened. "Cersei," Brienne murmured, or someone in her name. Loras's gaze held fury. "Give me leave, your grace. I shall ride to the holdfast in a." Renly raised a palm. "No rash charges. If she means to burn us, we cannot oblige her by charging into flames." He turned to Tarly. "Increase watches 3-fold. Post crossbowmen on every rooftop within a bowshot of the holdfast. That afternoon, thunder muttered over the bay and heat gave way to fitful wind. In the council chamber, Renly received ambassadors from the Iron Bank of Bravos. They bowed politely, ice cold as coins. They inquired about debts owed by the crown. Renly smiled, parried, deferred. Peter Baelish whispered suggestions, new tariffs on Myrish lace, perhaps? Renly left the details to him, though he suspected Littlefinger's math came scented with perfidy. Outside the window, lightning forked across the sky. Rain battered shutters, drumming a restless rhythm over the city's sprawling roofs. In darkened alleys, the drops raised dust into fragrant steam. Refugees from the Reach families uprooted by bandits in the chaos following Renly's departure for war huddled under balconies, wondering whether this new king would feed them or forget them. Overhead, cloth banners sagged heavy with water, their colors muted but not erased. Near sunset, Renly visited Stannis' quarters. He found his brother seated before an open window watching the storm lash waves against the base of the cliff beneath Maegor's holdfast. A single candle flickered on a low table where codices lay open. Legal codes of the realm, ledgers detailing ships anchored at Dragonstone, treatises on siegecraft. Stannis had lost his army but not his appetite for order. He turned as Renly entered, his eyes like broken slate. "Wildfire stolen," he said without greeting. "By your wife." "I have no wife," Renly answered. "Cersei's men, likely. Or your priestess, though I hope she fled." Stannis' lips curled. "Hope is a trick of the mind. If Melisandre lives, she will strike again. Fire is her sacrament." Renly crossed to the window seat opposite. Wind tossed his hair, rain spattered the sill. "Give me counsel, brother. You know Dragonstone's loads of obsidian, you know siege lines, supply trains. Sit at my table willingly and I will name you hand once the realm is settled." Stannis stared as though struck. "Hand of the king? Me, your captive? Neither my captive nor my enemy. A brother." Renly's voice softened. "Weariness of war sits heavy. I would rather battle with ink and law than steel. Serve, and together we might save this realm from Tywin's vengeance." Stannis closed the ledger. For a long moment he said nothing, the candle's light playing across deep lines at corners of his eyes. Eventually he spoke, voice hoarse. "I will sit at your table, but not for promise of title. For duty. The realm needs justice, else it rots." Renly felt tension he hadn't known. He held ease from his shoulders. "Justice, then." He rose, clasped Stannis' forearm. Though Stannis remained stiff, he did not pull away. Their grip lingered, a wordless truce. Within the hour, Renly convened a smaller council. Himself, Stannis, Davos Seaworth, Brienne, Garland Tyrell, and Catelyn Stark. Garland brought a map of the Blackwater's mouth, inked on doeskin. "We can install boom chains between the city's spit and the far shore," he suggested, tracing lines. "If Tywin's fleet attempts assault, they'll founder." Davos shook his head. "Chains can be broken. Better to sow caltrops of timber upriver, ships' hulls split on them whether tide is high or low." Stannis listened, then put forth an idea to mine the shallows with weighted barrels filled with pitch to be ignited from hidden watchtowers. Renly nodded, scribbling notes. Catelyn spoke of northern ice flows and how siege mentality starved both sides. She urged securing grain from the stormlands, Tarthus fields brimmed with barley that had not yet been tithed. Brienne volunteered to ride as envoy, trusting in her father's loyalty and the Tyrell reputation to grant safe passage through contested lands. Renly granted permission. When the meeting ended, torches guttered along the hall. Renly sought Loras's chambers, only to find the knight pacing like a caged cat. "You placed Stannis at your side," Loras said before Renly could speak. His voice trembled with blended jealousy and fear. "I placed duty," Renly replied. He reached to still Loras's restless hands. "You remain my strength, love, but Stannis brings order. I cannot rule on charm alone." Loras's shoulders slumped. "He will betray you." "He might," Renly admitted. "All men might. Even you if desire asked it. But I will trust until trust breaks." He drew Loras close, forehead to forehead. Rain hammered the shutters like an anxious drummer. Lightning flashed, illuminating shapes of two young men clasped amid swirling uncertainty. Thunder rolled across the city. In a dingy cellar beneath the narrow sea tavern, a cloaked woman fingered a ruby at her throat. The gem pulsed, answering the roll with a heartbeat of its own. Melisandre of Askai inhaled the damp, moldy air, smiling. She cradled a polished obsidian dagger and whispered words in a tongue older than the Iron Throne itself. Behind her, 3 jars of wildfire glimmered green. Her shadow writhed against lantern light, and for a moment the outline upon the wall lengthened into horns and wings before returning to simple form. She whispered one name, then another, Renly, Stannis, testing each upon her tongue like fine wine. The storm overhead muffled any sound her companions might make. She bent to her work. By dawn, 2 gold cloaks lay dead in an alley near the Dragon Gate, throats slit. Their torches had been doused, blood smeared the cobbles in dark loops. Tarly rode to the scene, jaw clenched. He dispatched search squads. Melisandre's wildfire jars were discovered missing from their sealed strongbox, along with the obsidian dagger. Renly's council convened at once. Rumor spread through the city like fever. Small folk whispered that dragons stirred beneath the keep, eager to feast. Some claimed they'd seen ghostly light creeping under their doorframes at midnight. Others insisted the mother wept tears of green flame for the realm's sins. Fishwives sold holy water salted with their own tears, promising it would quench unnatural fires. Tension coiled tighter. 4 days later, Renly received word from the west. Tywin Lannister had quit Harrenhal with 20,000 men, leaving only a skeleton garrison under Gregor Clegane. River lords prowling the Blackwater's headwaters reported banners moving south at forced march. With them traveled fresh wagons of provisions and siege engineers from Casterly Rock. Jaime's captivity festered in Tywin's pride. He would brook no second humiliation. Renly ordered the royal fleet, such as remained after years of neglect, refitted and manned by sailors from Storm's End. Davos supervised personally, coaxing ships trim enough to maneuver despite hulls swollen by rot. Stannis assisted, drafting plans for chain booms after all, though shaped cunningly to drop at the last moment and trap invading ships within crossfire arcs of scorpions mounted on towers. They argued so fiercely Davos sometimes thought they might come to blows, yet between them they forged a defense that combined cunning with raw steel. Days stretched into weeks. Rain returned each afternoon, drenching training yards and battering newly pitched tents for refugees within the city walls. Grain swollen with damp sprouted mold, Renly dispatched Tyrell porters to salvage what they could and burn the rest. He ordered each city district assigned a watch captain drawn equally from Stormland and Reach men to prevent old grudges from boiling. In flea-bottom soup kitchens boiled courtesy of Lady Olenna's coin, though rumor said she recouped her spending by cornering new spice taxes. Pycelle fussed about the treasury. Baelish assured him revenues would bloom like spring. Behind their backs, coins vanished through channels as hidden as sewer grates. Brienne returned from Tarth with word that Selwyn the Evenstar pledged ships and grain. Other storm lords followed. Renly publicly embraced Brienne upon her report, calling her shield of faith. She flushed again, accustomed neither to praise nor the roar of court cheers that greeted her. The Knights of the Reach began saluting her as they passed. She remained uncertain how to respond but bowed stiffly each time. Across the sea, Daenerys Targaryen's Khalasar approached Karth, though such whispers reached King's Landing only through Lysine spice traders. Renly filed the name away, half memory, half caution. Dragons returning would be only another variable in a realm already fracturing. On the first clear dawn of the 3rd week, Renly summoned his lords to the Dragondit. The ancient dome, long collapsed, lay open to the sky like a wound of memory. Sunlight shafted through and painted broken columns gold. Great scaffolds erected overnight held rows upon rows of townsfolk, guildmasters, hedge knights. At the center stood the Iron Throne, dragged there at Renly's order, its ragged silhouette stark against shining morning. He approached in ceremonial green armor chased with gold filigree, crown upon his head. The High Septon pronounced blessings, anointing him anew with scented oil. Trumpets brayed. Lords knelt, most willingly, a few grudgingly. Stannis watched, his face unreadable. When came his turn, he knelt with stiff grace, speaking the formal words of fealty, though his voice held note of inevitable dissent. From balconies draped in crimson velvet, Cersei Lannister observed. She stood beside Joffrey, her hand upon his shoulder. Guards flanked them. When the crowd shouted acclaim, Renly! Renly! Joffrey's cheeks flamed scarlet. He turned to his mother, words lost amid the cacophony. Cersei's gaze never left the new king. She lifted a goblet of wine, sipped, and smiled a feline smile that did not meet her eyes. In her sleeve, concealed, another of Melisandre's stolen jars nestled against her palm. She felt its warmth, a heartbeat echoing her own. Not yet, she told herself. The darkness must coil tighter before this flame will strike. Below, Renly addressed the gathered throng. He spoke of justice, of mercy, of realm united under the crown forged from Robert's dream and hammered straight by duty. He promised roads rebuilt, trade revived, walls mended, and hearts healed. He acknowledged the North's rightful king, pledging envoys and peaceful discourse. He offered safe conduct to any house willing to lay down arms. His voice carried across broken stone, weaving hope as a weaver threads wool. When he finished, thunderous applause washed over him like surf against cliffs. Yet between the shouts, a single clear voice rose from the stands. A child's voice shouting, "Long live King Joffrey!" A hush rippled outward. Gold cloaks tensed. Renly lifted a gauntlet hand, silencing reaction. "We are one realm," he replied to the unseen heckler, "and each voice shall be heard. May the Seven watch over King Joffrey as they watch over us all." The child fell silent. Applause returned, albeit wary. That night, Renly hosted feast in the Great Hall. Tables groaned under roasts, freshwater trout, wheels of Tyroshi cheese, honeyed dormice, and barrels of arbor gold. Candles pooled wax in silver candelabra. Jongler played, yet unease crawled beneath the revel. Some reached nights-eyed Lannister guards across the hall. Lannister eyes stared back with flinty menace. Cersei attended, her hair a cascade of gold. She sipped wine but ate little. When Renly toasted peace, she raised her goblet politely. Stannis sat at a side table with Davos and Brienne, speaking seldom. Later, Renly sought Cersei in the shadowed corridor above the Godswood courtyard. She waited beneath a flickering torch, green shadow dancing in her eyes. The queen including in her head. "Brother by law," she greeted, the title a tiny blade. "Your grace," Renly replied, equally courteous. "We must speak plainly." "I prefer honesty," Cersei said, stepping closer. She smelled of myrrh and sweet summer wine. The scent almost masked the faint hint of sulphurous smoke clinging to her gown. "Unlike some, I tire of false laughter." "Then let us be honest." Renly folded arms. "The Iron Throne seats one. The realm has chosen. Yet Joffrey shall want for nothing, lands, income, safety, if you swear fealty. He may keep Casterly Rock as his seat, or Lannisport. I will grant him mine own brother's seat if he desires." Cersei's laugh was low-edged. "You would cast off my son like a spare cloak." "I am lioness, Renly. Lions do not kneel to stags." "Lions kneel to peace," Renly corrected. "Or perish." Her expression hardened. "Beware threats. They turn keen edges back upon the hand that wields them." She stepped away, gown whispering. "My answer remains. A mother will burn the world before letting thieves steal her child's crown." "Burn?" Renly repeated. She smiled, and in her smile he saw a flicker of green. The following dawn, scouts reported Tywin's vanguard 2 days' march from Maidenpool. Ravens spoke of brutal pace, beasts fell dead, carters beaten to keep wagons churning. Renly dispatched riders to recruit archers from Blackwater bush villages, offering silver stags per head. He reinforced walls along the Rose Road, set catapults within sight of the city gates. Loras drilled knights daily, Garland organized watch rotations. Tarly drilled foot with pitiless zeal. One sweltering evening, Renly and Stannis stood upon the walls, surveying trenches dug across fields south of the city. Fires dotted the horizon, villages Tywin's outriders torched. Stannis pulled at his beard. "We must strike first." Renly shook his head. "We cannot risk open field. Our walls hold advantage." "You sound like me." Stannis's tone carried faint mockery. "Wisdom's voice is not bound to a single throat." Renly grinned despite the grim prospect. "Besides, we have secret to spring." He referred to rumors Davos had spread that half Tywin's ships were plague-poisoned. Whether those ships existed or not mattered little. What mattered was Tywin's uncertainty. Yet Tywin seldom bent to rumor. Renly suspected a siege soon. 2 days later, thunder of drums rolled across the fields. Tywin's host approached, banners snapping red and gold. Dust clouds boiled behind them, though rain threatened overhead. The outer villages had been abandoned. Farmers huddled within city walls with their beasts, families, and fear. Renly mustered his forces upon the ramparts, a mosaic of green stags and golden roses, blue griffins of Grandison, the purple lightning of Dondarrion. He donned polished helm shaped like a stag's head, antlers gilded. Loras wore silver breastplate damascened with climbing roses. Brienne bore her father's Sapphire Lake sigil on new shield. Stannis arrayed tall in black plate, helm crested with a single iron stag. Though his own men followed Tywin now, he stood resolute beside Renly for vow or for duty. Tywin's army encamped beyond Scorpion Range. Siege towers rose, covered in damp hides. Trenches were dug. Catapults rolled into position. The field before the walls became bristling forest of iron and intent. At dusk, 2 envoys rode forth, Ser Kevin Lannister and Ser Adam Marbrand. They requested parley. Renly accepted. Next morning, under great striped pavilion pitched halfway between, Renly, Stannis, Kevin, and Marbrand sat across crude plank table. Guards ringed them. The parley began with pleasantries thin as parchment. Quickly Kevin laid Tywin's terms: unconditional surrender, titles stripped, all Tyrell lands forfeit, King's Landing to host Lannister garrison, Renly to kneel before Joffrey and beg mercy. Renly laughed softly. Stannis merely stared. Renly countered: return of Jaime, recognition of his crown, restoration of Riverlands, revocation of Lannister debts owed by the throne. Kevin's nostrils flared. The talks ended as they began, in disagreement. That night wildfire glowed beneath the city like coals beneath kettle. Some small folk swore to feeling heat through stone floors. Cersei's spies whispered along sewers that the time had come. Melisandre, cloaked, drifted through shadows to meet her. Within Maegor's holdfast, beneath flickering torch, queen and priestess faced one another. Wildfire jar glimmered between them. Cersei's expression was hard as garnet. "You promised me victory." Melisandre smiled. "I promised you fire. Victory is the Lord's to bestow." Her ruby pulsed. "If the flames consume your enemies, victory follows." "My children must live," Cersei snapped. "Promise me that." "The fire chooses," Melisandre whispered. "Yet sacrifice guides its hunger away. A king's blood offered, one drop, may turn flames aside." Her gaze slid to Joffrey, half asleep on a woven mat. "Or a lesser king's blood." She produced a second jar. Cersei recoiled. "No." "Then offer another," Melisandre crooned. "A usurper's. Renly's blood." "Stannis's. Bring me the heart of the false stag, and your cub will rule in sunlight." Cersei's pulse hammered in her temples. She thought of Robert's corpse, of Ned Stark's head on spike, of whispers that Aerys's ghosts roamed the throne room. She thought of wildfire caches deep beneath the sept, under the streets, under the dragondet. The jars could turn the city into grave for stags and roses alike. But would the lion survive? She set jar aside, drew breath. "You shall have Renly's blood," she whispered, icily calm. "But not in destruction that kills my own son's realm. We must be cunning." Melisandre's eyes gleamed like embers. "I shall weave shadows." 2 nights later, the moon hid behind clouds. Tywin's siege towers creaked forward under cover of dark. Men with muffled boots unspooled rope lines to cross moats. The city's sentries, weary from long watch, scanned gloom. Suddenly, along the southern parapet, a cloaked figure ignited a jar of wildfire and hurled it into the moat's oily surface. Green flame blossomed like no natural blaze, leaping high against the wall. The night split with screams. More jars streaked skyward, thrown from unseen hands within the city. Panic erupted. Some gold cloaks fired arrows blindly over walls, striking their own. Renly rushed to parapet, crown askew. Brienne, beside him, shouted orders. Water buckets were useless, the wildfire clung to liquid, spreading. Renly ordered archers to loose at shadows within city to suppress saboteurs. Stannis arrived breathless, eyes wild. "Shadow of the Lord of Light," he muttered. "Melisandre." They fought the blaze through the night. Stormland sappers dug channels to divert burning oil away from walls. Maesters administered milk of the poppy to men whose skins sloughed in green embers. By dawn the moat smoldered, towers stood blackened but intact. Casualties weighed heavy, yet the defense held. Renly summoned search parties. They captured 2 robed figures near the Street of Flower. One swallowed poison before capture, the other, an acolyte of Lawler, confessed under torment that Melisandre served both lion and light. Cersei's involvement became suspicion turned near certainty. Stannis railed, demanding his brother arrest the queen. Renly hesitated, civil blood within walls would fracture fragile unity. He offered compromise. Confine Cersei and Joffrey within holdfast under guard for their own safety. Stannis scowled but assented. Cersei submitted to guard with brittle dignity. Joffrey screamed treason. Melisandre vanished once more, some saying she dove into the Blackwater, others that a dragon of shadow bore her away. Tywin's host advanced siege towers again. But wildfire charred the ground before walls, smoke hung thick, choking men and beasts. Engineers found foundation stones cracked from heat. Tywin postponed assault, choosing bombardment instead. Catapults snarled day and night. Granite blocks smashed parapets, arbalests sent 5-yard bolts sailing over ramparts. Renly's archers answered, casualty lists grew. Within the city walls, tension frayed like old rope. Grain ran low, water cisterns fouled. Riots flared in Flea Bottom, Tyrell Knights rode them down but earned resentment. Renly visited soup kitchens personally, distributing bread, giving coin. His presence pacified some, yet hunger breeds memory longer than charity. On the 7th day of siege, ravens arrived from the north. Robb Stark had captured Harrenhal, thwarting Gregor's attempt to reinforce Tywin. Furthermore, a fleet sailed from White Harbor bringing grain down the coast. Renly seized the news, declaring Feast of Hope. Bells rang, songs soared. Tywin's outlying scouts glimpsed sails on horizon and redoubled bombardment, but supply ships slipped upriver under cover of fog. Mace Tyrell pressed Renly to wed Margaery swiftly for morale. Olenna agreed. A realm loves a wedding nearly as much as bread. Stannis objected to frivolity. Davos counseled caution. Renly weighed advantages. Eventually he consented to betrothal ceremony, only betrothal, no lavish feast while folk starved. The ceremony took place in Sept Courtyard, small but radiant. Margaery wore rose-gold silk, hair bound with living blossoms enchanted to survive day's heat. Renly offered her a simple band. She slipped it onto his finger. Crowds cheered. Loras watched with shining eyes, masking complex ache. He loved his sister yet loved his king more. That night Tywin launched full assault. Siege towers rolled, battering rams pounded gates. Chains dropped into river, trapping Lannister longships under arrow slits where pitch rained. A tower breached King's Gate wall. Stannis led counter-assault, his black stag banner rallying knights and small folk armed with picks. Brienne fought beside him, her greatsword carving path up tower's ramp. Renly, atop gatehouse, directed scorpions at siege engines, shouting orders. Loras led cavalry sally that flanked attackers at sunset, driving wedge between Tywin's vanguard and supply wagons. Dust thickened as dusk bled into night. Torches painted clashing armor orange. In the melee inside gate, Stannis confronted Ser Gregor Clegane, the Mountain. They traded blows like smiths striking anvils, sparks flying. Stannis' shoulder dented, Gregor laughed. Brienne intervened, parrying Mountain's second stroke that might have split Stannis' helm. Her blade rang, she staggered. Renly charged downstairs, antlered helm gleaming. Together they forced Gregor back, step by furious step. At last a flight of quarrels from city parapet found gaps in Mountain's plate. He roared, retreating. Stannis slumped, Brienne steadied him. Night deepened. Fires raged across field, screams echoed. Yet by dawn the walls still stood. Tywin's assault had failed, cost him thousands. Renly's forces, though bloodied, held. Tywin convened war council, face set like chiseled granite. Scouts reported Stark banners moving south. Harrenhal lost meant supply line threatened. Also, rumor of Ironborn ravaging Westerlands. Tywin weighed pride against pragmatism. At dusk he ordered horns blown, retreat toward the Trident and then west. Lannister banners withdrew, red and gold sinking behind ridges, leaving smoke and corpses. Within King's Landing, wearied defenders stared over parapets in disbelief as enemy ranks slunk away. A ragged cheer rose, swelling until it roared like a new battle cry. Tears streaked soot-blackened cheeks. Renly slumped against Stone Merlin, exhaustion washing away adrenaline. Loras embraced him, heedless of blood on armor. Brienne knelt briefly, head bowed. Stannis stood apart, eyes tracking departing lines, face unreadable. Cersei watched from tower window. When news reached her, she smashed goblet against wall. Joffrey sulked. Melisandre's jar of wildfire remained in Queen's chest, dormant glow pulsing to a slow heartbeat. She considered hurling it from height but did not. For now. Renly gathered council that evening. He ordered immediate relief for wounded, prioritized grain distribution, decreed quarter day of public thanksgiving. He pardoned gold cloaks who faltered under Cersei's whip, though those who murdered in riot faced full justice. He named Davos Admiral of Royal Fleet. Davos accepted with quiet astonishment. He appointed Brienne to Kingsguard, first woman in history, drawing both cheers and mutters. He designated Stannis' hand, formalizing earlier promise. Stannis accepted, though his acceptance tasted of ashes. In private he spoke to Renly, "Mark me, the fire still waits. Cersei will not yield, and Melisandre shadow works beyond our ken." Renly nodded. "Then we build watch against shadow. Together." In months that followed, King's Landing healed slowly. Streets paved, wells purified, markets reopened. Northern grain flowed by river barge. Stannis reorganized city watch, removing corrupt captains. Brienne drilled new guard cadre. Loras strutted in tournaments staged to raise spirits, but purposefully lost final bouts to hedge knights, so coin prizes fed widows. Margaery walked among gardens, organizing orphanages. Robb Stark's envoys arrived to treat. Renly welcomed them and offered to host summit at Riverrun. Meanwhile, Ironborn raids forced Tywin to defend his own coastline. The lion's roar lost some thunder. Dorne remained watchful. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys's hatchlings grew. Yet within secret chambers under the Red Keep, wildfire still slumbered, and in a cell facing sunrise, Cersei Lannister waited and plotted, counting each dawn as step towards some future blaze. And beyond the walls, Melisandre walked roads lined with oak and ash, whispering to night breezes. She carried no jar now, only flint and steel and a prayer of fire that promised the world would one day burn bright enough to birth new God King. So the realm lived between embers and rose petals, laughter and lament, on the edge of a sword too beautiful to sheathe, too terrible to wield. And the game played on, four kings rise and fall, but stories endure, and the song of summer's stag had only just begun its chorus. Rain gave way to a damp hush that settled over King's Landing like a sodden cloak. Morning broke pale in the east, hazed by ash from the burned siege towers abandoned beyond the city walls. Puddles in the rutted lanes reflected a sky the color of old pewter, gutter streams carried grease, petals, and shards of shattered crockery down toward the Blackwater where gulls shrieked and circled in hungry spirals. The war lay quivering beneath its scab of smoke, but war, like infection, never slept. Renly Baratheon woke before dawn. He had slept in the king's tower for the first time, the heavy velvet drapes embroidered with crowned stags pulled tight about windows still cracked by the Mad King's dying blaze. Candle stubs guttered in silver sconces. Across a table littered with maps and half-drained wine cups, the crown of summer, a circlet of gold wrought into twisting antlers, gleamed listlessly. Renly ran callous fingers along the points, as if unsure the thing was real. The crown felt heavier than iron, though lighter than the burdens it symbolized. A kestrel screamed somewhere above the roof. Dawn light seeped between curtains, striping the flagstones. Renly rose, dressed in a simple doublet of green and brown, belted his sword, and left the chamber, boots whispering on worn carpets. Two Stormland guards trailed him at a respectful distance. He descended the tower's spiral stairs past echoing landings, where portraits of long-dead kings glared from cracked gilt frames. Their haughty eyes seemed to track him, as though expecting failure. At the Tower of the Hand, Stannis waited in a small council room crowded with navigational charts, tallies of grain, and scrolls heavy with ribbons. He stood at a window, gauntlet hands clasped behind his back, gazing down at the river where the royal fleet, newly renamed the Dawn Watch, rocked at piers. Renly greeted him. "Brother, you're awake early." "I have yet to sleep," Stannis answered without turning. Candlelight traced the hard lines of his cheekbones. "Tywin Lannister retreats, but he retreats toward his strength. I count little victory in holding the city if we lose the realm beyond its gates." Renly joined him by the casement. Below, barges ferried grain unloaded overnight from the Manderley flotilla. "The North keeps faith already," Renly said. "Food begins to flow. We have breathing room." Stannis's mouth tightened. "Breath alone will not keep lungs alive. We need allies in flesh and steel." He tapped knuckles against the window frame. "Will you honor your vow and ride to meet Robb Stark? Or must we draft more placating letters?" Renly suppressed a sigh. "I sent ravens promising a summit at Riverrun before winter sets its claws." Lord Hoster's maester replied. "Robb marches south along the King's Road with 10,000 spears, intending to safeguard the parley." 10,000? Stannis raised one brow. Safeguard or coerce? Robb's caution is understandable. Renly smiled crookedly. "If you had been crowned at 16, would you have trusted a southern king's invitation?" Stannis grunted. "At 16 I trusted no man. Now less still." He turned fully. "When do we ride?" "In 6 days," Renly said. "Enough time for repairs to gates, for grain to reach the poorest wards, and for me to settle with the High Septon an edict forbidding press gangs within the city. When we return, I intend a city still standing, not one gnawed by riot." Stannis nodded, relenting for now, but the crease between his brows remained deep. The day ripened into a clammy warmth that left tunics sticking to ribs. Caravans of small folk trudged out the river gate under watchful bows, returning to villages blackened by Tywin's torch. Many carried little more than cooking pots and bundles of clothes. Some carried the ashes of kin. Renly rode among them astride a sturdy courser, speaking quiet words, promising seed grain, tools, coin rebates on taxes for the next planting season. Though grief filmed their eyes, a few managed tired smiles. Along the riverbank, Garland Tyrell oversaw reconstruction of dock pilings splintered by falling catapult stones. He greeted Renly with a salute of hammer against nail. "Your grace, these will hold galleys by moon's turn." And the northern wheat gods be good, it smells like peace. "It smells like home," Renly said, clapping Garland's shoulder. "Keep at it. The new realm will be built board by board." Farther inland, Loras drilled 100 rural recruits, orphans, pickpockets, cobblers' sons, into something that might one day resemble a royal guard. Their wooden practice swords clacked. Sweat streamed down flushed faces. Loras demanded perfect footwork, perfect poise, yet he tempered harsh commands with jest, coaxing laughter even as arms trembled. When Renly appeared, the recruits cheered raggedly. Loras bowed, grinning. Perspiration darkened his silver-and-rose surcoat. "They'll not hold a gate against knights tomorrow," he said. "But give me 3 months." "You have them," Renly replied. He watched one skinny lad manage a shaky pirouette that nearly took off his neighbor's ear. "May the mother guard their fingers until then." Brienne of Tarth patrolled the street of silk, helm worn though visor raised, blue eyes scanning doorways. Word had reached them of Sellswords posing as city watch and shaking down brothels for coin. Brienne found 3 such posing men and relieved them of knives, purses, and dignity. Now she stood outside Chataya's, listening to complaints from silk-clad women and a few men in painted faces. When Renly arrived, Brienne knelt awkwardly amid a swirl of incense and perfume. "Rise," he said. "Has the night's vice spilled any more of its poison?" "Not tonight, your grace," Brienne replied. "I will keep watch until dawn. The lady's here." She glanced, flushed, at Chataya's daughter Alayaya, who winked teasingly. "Express gratitude for the crown's protection." Renly noticed a red silk handkerchief tucked into Brienne's belt. She noticed his gaze, blushed deeper. "A token they pressed upon me, your grace. I did not wish to offend." Renly stifled a smile. "Tokens weave threads of loyalty. Wear it proudly." He turned to Alayaya. "My gratitude for aiding city order." The girl curtsied with playful flair. Deep beneath the Red Keep, in a vaulted chamber built by Maegor's masons, 3 pyromancers knelt before racks of green jars, chanting soft litanies to still the wildfire's restless spirits. Torches hissed in sconces dampened with wet clay. Lord Haleen sweated inside heavy leather gloves as he supervised the counting. Renly descended stone stairs with Randall Tarley and 2 guards. Haleen rose. "Your grace, we have accounted for all but 8 of the stolen jars. 5 exploded by the gate, as your soldiers witnessed. 3 remain missing." His voice quavered. "We fear they lie still within the city." Tarley's jaw clenched. "Search every cellar, every cistern. Post a bounty for report of any stranger peddling green light." Renly listened, then approached the racks. Rows of slick glass pulsed faintly. Reflections of torchlight crawled inside like captive spirits. The king felt an involuntary shiver. "Keep 2 score guards at these doors day and night, and see that no single man holds all the keys." He turned to Haleen. "If another jar escapes, I will hold the guild answerable." Sweat trickled down Haleen's neck. "We serve the realm, sire. The substance is temperamental." "And dragons were temperamental," Renly cut in. "Both burned cities. I would prefer none in mine." Cersei Lannister's quarters in Maegor's Holdfast were bright with candles, though midday sun shone outside. She sat before a mirror, brushing golden hair while Grand Maester Pycelle read from a scroll listing courtesy titles she would retain under Renly's settlement. She ignored him. Across the room, Joffrey paced, cheeks blotched, complaining of boredom, of traitors, of the stag's farce of justice. "Mother, free me to go among the guards. I will whip them into shape. They will remember their true king." "You are a king," Cersei said, voice silk over steel, "in name if not in power. Do not squander that dignity on tantrums." Her gaze flicked to Pycelle. "Leave us." Pycelle bobbed and shuffled away. When the chamber door shut, Cersei beckoned her son. "Listen well. Our lion waits, patient. Tywin regroups. When he strikes again, he will not withdraw. Meanwhile, we erode the stag's foundation." She produced a parchment bearing a map of the Kingswood. "Melisandre prepares a miracle." Joffrey frowned at the red marks. "Fire. More potent than fire, fear. A sign the 7 cannot deny. When the people see the stag's light extinguished, our lion will roar." She kissed his brow softly, though her green eyes shimmered like glass knives. "Be brave, my sweet. The shadow of the city belongs to us." Melisandre, cloaked in charcoal robes, watched from the corner, ruby necklace glowing softly. "The night grows heavy with unborn flame," she murmured. "When the hour comes, your foes will burn from within." Cersei met her eyes, unblinking. 6 days passed. Repairs advanced. Grain stores filled. Wells were cleared of corpses thrown by saboteurs. Yet each dawn brought new rumors: a shop burned near Flea Bottom, a gold cloak found gutted by alleyway, a child describing a woman made of shadow slipping through a barred window. Renly doubled lantern patrols. Stannis urged harsher measures. But they could not seal every crack in a city built upon fissures. The eve of departure dawned windless. Renly convened court in the great hall beneath freshly hung banners, the crowned stag of Baratheon quartered with the golden rose. He named Garland Tyrell Lord Commander of the City Watch during his absence. He left Lady Olenna empowered to oversee grain prices. He charged Davos with maintaining the river blockade should enemy sails appear. He visited the cell where Cersei and Joffrey remained under protective confinement. Cersei greeted him seated beside a war table, moving carved lions across a map of Westeros. "Going on holiday, Your Grace?" she asked. "Parley for peace," Renly replied. "When I return, I trust the city will stand." "It will," she purred, "so long as its heart continues beating." Her fingertips tapped the map where King's Landing lay inked in red. Renly studied her. Neither smile nor threat passed his lips. He turned away. Shadows twisted behind him, thrown by torches. Melisandre's whisper drifted from somewhere unseen. "Shadow is a sword drawn by the light's need." Renly paused, senses prickling, but saw only the guards flanking their torches. The royal retinue departed at dawn. Hoofs clattered upon cobbles. Banners snapped beneath a brisk breeze, finally sweeping the city of its smoke. Renly rode at the head, Loras and Brienne at flanks, Stannis a half-length behind, his black armor stark against Renly's green. 1,000 Stormlander cavalry followed, hooves raising plumes of dust. 2,000 foot marched under Tyrell command with carts of provisions, siege tools, and surgeons. Past the Rose Road's milestones they rode, through fields where charred stumps marked Tywin's march. New shoots of barley pushed between cinders, a fragile defiance. Villagers lined fences, cheering, pressing loaves and flags embroidered with stags into the soldiers' hands. Renly tossed pennies, rode slower so elders might glimpse his crown. On the second night, camp pitched beneath the half-ruined sept of Maidenpool. As cooks stirred stew pots and torches ringed picket lines, Stannis joined Renly beside a shallow stream. Moonlight silvered ripples. "I spoke today with your new Lord of Coin," Stannis said, meaning Baelish. "He schemes." "He breathes," Renly countered. "Scheming comes with breath." "Breathe other air," Stannis retorted. "A hand must advise, trust no coin counter who smiles to all." Renly crouched, cupped water, drank. Chill seeped through teeth. "If I culled every sneer, I'd rule a desert. Let Littlefinger weave webs, I watch spiders." Stannis considered him. "You trust Oris Tyrell." Renly laughed softly. "With my life. Not with the realms." Renly stood, wiping hands. "You've never loved where love grew, brother. Loras's ambition is a blade, yes, but pointed alongside mine, not at my throat." Stannis shook his head. "Blades turn. Hearts change. I warn you because I must." Renly met his gaze. "And I hear you because your hand. Keep watch." They returned to camp where singers strummed lutes, telling tales of summer stag beating winter wolf in contests of archery, sowing seeds of goodwill before the river unsummit. Soldiers laughed, clapped. Stars wheeled overhead. But beyond the firelight a whisper slithered through grass. Melisandre knelt upon a circle of carved weirwood chips arranged in a sigil unknown in Westeros. She drew a slender dagger of black glass, pricked her thumb, and let blood fall upon the weirwood chips. The ruby at her throat flared. A breath of wind hissed like a serpent. Shadows between tents thickened. Far off, horses whinnied, uneasy. Melisandre murmured names of power, heart of fire, blood of king. The shadows coalesced, swirling into something almost human, its form blurred like smoke beneath glass. She guided it with whispered commands. It drifted toward the king's tent. Inside, Renly shed armor, handing plates to his squire, Paxton Wild. Loras stood by, unlacing pauldrons, fingers deft. A candle flickered. Sudden chill brushed Renly's spine. He turned. The canvas wall billowed though no wind blew. Candle flame bent sideways. A silhouette rose, antlered head, gaunt limbs, eyes hollow flame. Renly's hand went reflexively to sword hilt. Loras froze, mouth open. The shadow lunged. A scream ripped through the air. Brienne, outside, felt hairs on neck rise. She tore back the tent flap just in time to see darkness congeal over Renly's chest, black limbs pinning him. Renly's eyes widened, reflecting flickering candlelight and his own death. Steel rasped as Brienne drew. Loras snatched his sword. They hacked at nothing, blades passed through smoke. Renly convulsed. Shadow fingers plunged into flesh without blood. A gasp, a rattle, then silence. The shadow melted, oozing across floorboards, slipping into seams. Candle righted, burning steady. Renly! Loras dropped to knees, clasping the king's shoulders. Blood stained his hands dark. Brienne knelt opposite, shaking. Her sword clanged to floor. Guards burst in. Confusion erupted. Stannis arrived seconds later, eyes like burnt coal in ash. He took in scene. Renly collapsed, Loras weeping, Brienne stunned, and something inside him twisted beyond words. Dawn bled slow between tent seams, revealing the thing no man wished to see. Renly Baratheon, king of the Seven Kingdoms, slain without blade. Chaos tore through the camp like wildfire. Tyrell knights shouted betrayal. Stormlanders howled grief. Some accused Stannis, recalling old rumors of shadows and priestess spells. Others blamed Lannister assassins or Frey treachery. Brienne, trembling with rage, swore she saw a shape that wore Renly's face but darker. Few believed, fewer understood. Loras Tyrell knelt sleepless beside Renly's shrouded body. Tears dried upon cheeks crusted with dust. Garland tried to lift him, but he would not move. Stannis convened his captains at first light. "We must assume command," he said. "The line of succession passes to me." "You speak before the shroud cools," Randall Tarly growled. "It cools already," Stannis snapped. "The realm cannot wait." Tarly's eyes narrowed. "You'll not win Tyrell loyalty by crowning yourself over Renly's corpse." "I crave not loyalty," Stannis replied. "I claim right." Tarly looked to Garland, who shook his head. "My house cannot follow Renly's killer." Stannis slammed fist on table. "I am no kinslayer." "Then name the fiend who struck him," Loras said, voice ragged as torn silk. He stood in doorway, eyes fever bright. "Name her." "Melisandre." "We all heard rumor." Stannis stared. "I know nothing of shadows. I know only that duty calls me to rule." "No," Loras hissed. "Duty calls you to justice." He looked to the captains. "Storm's End men, Reach men, who rides with this self-proclaimed just king?" At his back, a dozen Tyrell knights raised banners. Tarly hesitated. Renly's will named no heir, yet realm needs seat. Garland placed hand on Tarly's arm. No seat perched upon murder. Camp fractured. Tyrell banners pulled back toward their wagons. Stormlanders grappled with grief, torn between bloodline and suspicion. Davos urged calm, but his voice was lost in uproar. Before noon, Loras gathered his household guard, placed Renly's body in oiled silk, and prepared to ride for Highgarden. Brienne refused to leave Renly, but Loras bid her escape, for Stannis's men already whispered of arrest for suspicion. Garland gave her a gelding, pressed a purse into her hands. She fled north into Kingswood gloom. Stannis attempted to speak with Loras, but the Knight of Flowers spurred his horse away. Tyrell banners, 2,000 strong, quick camp in dust and thundering hooves bearing their dead king. Stannis watched them depart, jaw clenched. He commanded his remaining force, barely 1,500 Stormlanders and a scattering of Sel's words, to break camp. "Riverrun summit proceeds. I alone bear crown." Davos took him aside. "My lord, delay. Without the Reach we cannot prevail against Lannisters nor hold Riverlands if Robb turns sour." Stannis' eyes burned. "Delay breeds doubt. Doubt breeds dissent. We ride." The Riverlands lay sodden from autumn rains. Fields glimmered beneath low clouds like mirrors set in mud. Crops stood unharvested where war had torn away farmers. Blackened farmhouses dotted distances like rotted teeth. Riverrun's red towers rose above the confluence of the Red Fork and Tumblestone, banners of the leaping trout fluttering damply. Outside walls sprawled ranks of northern encampments, Grey Direwolf of Stark, Blue Sunburst of Karstark, Mailed Fist of Mormont. Inside walls, Lord Edmure fretted over provisioning. Robb Stark, king in the north, awaited the southern summit. His bannermen urged caution. Meage Mormont spat that southern oaths were wind. Roose Bolton advised keeping host arrayed. Great John Umber roared for ale and hounds. When ravens brought word of Renly's death and Stannis' ascension, alarm rippled through the camps. Some claimed Lannister blades had done the deed. Others whispered of darker arts, but all wondered what this meant for peace. Robb convened war council beneath a rain-spattered pavilion. Grey wind prowled behind, hackles raised. "We came to treat with Renly, not Stannis," Robb said. Yet Stannis bears Baratheon name. Catelyn Stark had arrived earlier with escort bearing news of city's siege and Tywin's withdrawal. Now she sat among lords, eyes heavy with grief for Renly she had come to know, horror at the sorcery rumored. She spoke, "Stannis has blood right now, but the Tyrells repudiate him. The realm fractures further." Roose Bolton's voice glided like oiled steel. "Fractures we might exploit. Offer Stannis peace in exchange for the Southron lords he cannot command." "Exploit as a butcher exploits a lamb," Catelyn snapped. "This war has claimed enough sons." Bolton's pale eyes flicked to her. He bowed his head. "I follow my king." Robb stared at the map, fingers tracing rivers. If Stannis seeks judgment for Renly's death, he must prove innocence. A king who murders kin cannot be trusted. Lord Karstark snorted. "One Baratheon or two, what matters to the north? We want our homeland free of southern chains." Catelyn shot him a sharp look. "What happens in the south crosses the neck sooner or later." Robb exhaled. "Let Stannis come. We hear him. But we hold our lines and we do not sheath swords until truth emerges." Stannis' truncated army reached Riverrun under a slate sky that promised more rain. Trumpets announced his arrival. Stark sentries eyed black stag banners suspiciously, letting Stannis, Davos, and a dozen knights cross the drawbridge. The rest camped beyond. In the great hall, beneath tapestries of leaping trout, Robb greeted Stannis with solemn courtesy. Grey wind prowled, teeth bared. Stannis bowed stiffly. "My condolences on your brother," Robb said. "Your courtesy rings hollow," Stannis replied. "Men whisper I slew Renly." "What do you say?" Robb asked. "I say the gods hold judgment," Stannis said, eyes flicking to the heart tree carved into a pillar, "and men see only shadows." Catelyn observed them, heart sinking. This meeting already frayed. Stannis laid claim, "The Iron Throne is mine by right. I offer the North recognition of independence, the Riverlands sovereignty under Stark alliance, if you bend knee." Robb's jaw tensed. "You offer what is already mine. I do not bend." Stannis' lips thinned. "Then we are foes." Catelyn rose. "Be neither foe nor false friend. Find common enemy in Lannister. Root out sorcery that killed Renly. Then speak of crowns." Stannis regarded her as though weighing iron. "Find the murderer, yes. I shall see Melisandre's role uncovered, if role she had." He turned back to Robb. "Will you aid me against Lannister?" Roose Bolton interjected smoothly. "Aid has price." Robb silenced him with a glance. "Help crush the lion and we speak anew. But first clear the cloud of fratricide." Stannis nodded once. "Truth then war." Night fell. Catelyn walked Riverrun's battlements alone. Rain began again, soft and persistent. In the dimness she saw Brienne of Tarth striding along parapet, cloak plastered to breastplate. They greeted quietly. "I journey to Highgarden," Brienne said, voice hoarse. "Lady Olenna calls me to stand vigil." "You seek justice," Catelyn said. "Justice died with my king," Brienne whispered. "But vengeance breeds." Catelyn touched her arm. "Do not let vengeance blind you." Brienne's eyes glimmered. "What else remains to guide me?" She turned, descended staircase, vanished into wet dark. Catelyn watched torchlight bob across the courtyard. Lightning flickered, illuminating the confluence of river swollen and black. Water always flowed on, no matter how much blood sank into its depths. In King's Landing, Mace Tyrell received his daughter and his king's corpse at the Mudgate. He sobbed, tore fine silks, swore retribution. Behind him, Lady Olenna comforted Margaery with a touch lighter than falling petals, though her eyes were flint. They laid Renly in the great September of Baelor, surrounded by 1,000 candles. Crowds filed past. Mourners left roses, stag figurines, locks of hair, prayers scribbled on scraps. Loras knelt through 3 days and nights, refusing food. On the morning of the 4th, Olenna summoned him. "Weep later. Live now. The game goes on." Loras rose, hollow-eyed. "For what?" "For the Reach," she said. "For Margaery. For the memory of a king who loved you." She cupped his cheek. "Feed grief to the roses, it will make them redder." Mace convened his bannermen. Bitter words flew: Stannis murderer, Lannister accomplice, the crown worthless. Some lords urged war upon Stannis, others upon King's Landing. Olenna silenced them with cane rap. We will wed the girl to the next throne worth having, she declared. And we shall choose which head wears it. That night, Littlefinger arrived bearing condolences and veiled offers. The Tyrells listened. A cunning flower bends to sun no matter where it rises. In Maegor's holdfast Cersei paced. News of Renly's death reached her like sweet perfume. But victory smelled faint. Tyrell rage threatened alliance, Stannis yet drew breath, and wildfire jars remained missing. Melisandre had vanished into river mist. Cersei summoned Qyburn, expelled Maester of Unknown Arts to fill void of counselor. He promised potions and whispers. Find Melisandre, Cersei commanded. Alive. For study or for stake? Qyburn asked, voice soft. Whichever yields more fire, she answered. Across the narrow sea, Daenerys Targaryen's dragons shed first scales of metal sheen, breathing hotter. Qarth trembled at their roar. Xaro Zoan Daxos spoke of alliances. In Westeros, kings kill brothers and queens burn cities. A dragon may find feast there. Daenerys listened, eyes like sunset over smoking sea. I will take what is mine, she whispered. At Riverrun, Stannis knelt in godwood before a heart tree carved before Undulls came south. Rain slapped leaves. He prayed, though not to old gods or seven. He asked for justice, clarity, proof. Thunder answered. From behind the trunk stepped Davos. My king, he said. I found tracks by the riverbank, barefoot woman, tall. Could be priestess. Stannis rose. Hunt her. Bring her alive. Davos hesitated. And if she wields shadow again? Then we see if shadows bleed, Stannis said. In the northern camp, Roose Bolton convened a quiet council beneath his banner of flayed men. Among them a Frey emissary, Walder Rivers, spread rumor that Stannis had offered Winterfell to Bolton if he turned cloak. Roose smiled thinly. At the same hour, Tully outriders spotted Bolton men removing stakes marking Stark patrol lines. The seed of distrust sprouted anew. Rain ceased, giving way to gray dawn. Robb Stark met Catelyn by riverside. She looked weary. Murder breeds suspicion like flies, she said. And suspicion breeds more murder, Robb replied. He threw a stone, ripples scudded across Tumblestone. We stand upon a blade's edge, mother. If it breaks, we fall into abyss. She laid hand on his. Then hold true to what keeps you upright. Honor. Justice. He nodded, though doubt clouded his gaze. By mid-morning, Davos returned leading 4 of his best river scouts. Between them, they bore a bound figure in drenched scarlet robes. Melisandre's ruby still glowed, though water dripped from her hair. She met Stannis' eyes calmly within Riverrun's dungeon. Why, he asked, voice like flint. The Lord of Light revealed paths, she said. Renly's flame flickered, I blew. You served me, Stannis said. I served fire, she replied. You are its vessel when full. Empty, another is raised. Stannis trembled. Never again. He turned to Davos. Take her to the wall. Let cold extinguish her fire. Melisandre laughed softly. Fire lives inside men. Even ice cannot chain it forever. Davos took her away under heavy guard. Shadows clung to corridor corners. Summer waned toward autumn. Messages crisscrossed kingdoms. Tyrell envoys visited Casterly Rock. Littlefinger rode to Bitterbridge with whispers of a queen in need of new husband. Ravens from Dorne offered water gardens as venue for peace. Thrice each moon, emissaries departed for Bravos bearing pleas for coin from all claimants. At Riverrun, tensions spiked when Bolton riders clashed with Karstark sentries after dusk. Blades flashed, 2 men died. Bolton apologized, called it mischief. Robb demanded hostages, Bolton provided none. Unease gnawed. Catelyn sought Stannis again. She found him in Solar poring over treatise on lineage. He looked up. I will accept trial by combat, he said abruptly. To cleanse rumor. Who would fight as champion, she asked. I will fight myself. Catelyn sighed. And if you fall? Then I answer for crime I did not commit. She touched his arm. Do not add another corpse. Truth may yet dawn. That truth arrived in the form of a deserter from Cersei's guard, a man named Oren Wild, no kin to the Squire Paxton. He fled north, claiming Cersei and Melisandre conspired to kill Renly. Under Stark interrogation, he described wildfire jars, secret meeting in Holdfast, promises of power. Robb confronted Stannis with testimony. Stannis listened, face stone, then said softly, I believe it. Catelyn nearly sagged with relief. If Stannis accepted innocence, perhaps there lay chance. Robb addressed lords under Grand Pavilion, murdered by Lannister plot, Renly lies beyond justice. But his dream of realm free of tyranny endures. I wield sword against Lannister, not against rightful lords. He turned to Stannis. Fight beside me. When lion falls, we speak of crowns. Stannis bowed stiffly. As you say. Alliance inked in blood of common enemy, northern and southern banners mingled. Yet each lord kept half an eye on the other, trust fragile as eggshell. In King's Landing, wildfire vanished from holdfast cellars. Qyburn reported jars missing. Cersei slapped him. Useless. She strode to balcony where Blackwater glittered. Tyrell envoys had arrived again, led by Ser Loras offering marriage pact, wed Marjorie to Joffrey, join hosts against Starks. Cersei weighed options. Tyrell coin could feed city, their grain could calm populace. She summoned Tommen, brushed his fair hair. One day, she whispered, you will wear a safer crown. She agreed to the marriage, but demanded Rose Road reopened, Highgarden grain immediate. Ser Loras accepted. Bells rang, announcing betrothal. Marjorie arrived in litters, dressed in mourning white. She curtsied to Cersei, eyes unreadable. In silent exchange, Lioness and Rose agreed to dance for now. Yet in the alleys behind Baelor's September, beggars whispered of a shadow queen in red weaving cinders. 3 nights after betrothal, a storehouse near Cobbler's Square erupted in green fire, incinerating wheat meant for the poor. Cersei blamed Stannis, common folk blamed Tyrell. Fingers pointed, riots sparked anew. Autumn's first frost dusted Riverrun ramparts white. Robb Stark studied a letter from Winterfell. Theon Greyjoy had betrayed, capturing Castle. Bran and Rickon missing. Robb clenched paper until knuckles whitened. Lord saw rage in his eyes. Stannis approached quietly. Family is iron, he said. It breaks only under great heat. Robb's voice cracked. The sea has boiled. Stannis offered ships anchored at Storm's End. Retake your home. I march on King's Landing meantime. Robb hesitated. Divide our strength? 2 blades at once may pierce where one cannot. Catelyn urged caution, but grief for her lost sons turned her voice thin. Robb agreed. Stark host split, Bolton and Frey to hold Riverrun, Robb to march north with Great John, Karstark, Mormont. Stannis prepared to march south with Stormlanders reinforced by fresh levy from Storm's End and sell sails contracted with Braavosi coin. Before departure, Robb and Stannis met at Weirwood Grove outside Castle. They clasped forearms. May we meet again beneath unbesieged sky, Robb said. Stannis nodded. And under a single sun. Grey wind howled, echoing across chill fields. Loras Tyrell, newly betrothed's brother, led 1,000 bright nights toward King's Landing, bearing grain carts. Royal decree pardoned his earlier misunderstanding with Stannis. Yet Loras's grief still smoldered. He swore silently before departing Highgarden Crypt. Renly's killer will die by Rose's thorns. As his host passed Bitterbridge, Ser Alistair Florent, Stannis's wife's kin, rode forth seeking alliance. Loras turned him away. Tyrell memory of shadow murder proved long. North of Riverrun, Brienne rode solo along empty road. She wore no sigil, only plain cloak over steel. At night she knelt by campfire, swearing oath anew to lay Renly in tomb of vengeance. In dreams, she saw shadow with antlers dissolve into smoke. She woke with tears and drew sword, vowing next time it would meet steel. Passing a silent village, she encountered outlaws wearing Baratheon sigils. They hailed her, demanded coin. She answered with blade. 2 fell, the rest fled. She wiped sword upon grass, sorrow etching deeper lines on brow. On windswept deck of narrow-hulled galley, Davos Seaworth steered fleet down the Trident toward mouth of Blackwater. Stannis's plan, attack at dawn with wildfire stores at Dragonstone captured earlier. Yet Davos's gut churned. He had seen fruit of green fire. He prayed to Mother for surf and salt to drown the jars before they reached city. Within Dragonstone's painted table chamber, Maester Pylus delivered Raven. Tyrell forces had entered city but refused to yield wildfire caches to Cersei. Instead, grain distributed to poor under Marjorie's sigil won hearts. Cersei fumed, smallfolk cheered new Little Queen. In response, Cersei secretly summoned House Kettle Black Cell's words, plotted to kidnap Marjorie. Varys in his secret chambers released white birds to unknown destinations. The game stretched wider, threads crossing sea, mountain, marsh. Each player tugged, weaving tapestry of dawn and blood. Yet above them all, seasons turned. Maesters noted ravens huddled thick upon rookery, odds of winter early. A chill edge crept into every wind. And somewhere beyond maps, in haunted forest north of Wall, cold ancient eyes opened. Ravens burst upward, croaking warnings no man understood. Stannis's host marched, footfalls drumming to heartbeat of vengeance. Tyrell banners fluttered within walls they once vowed to tear down. Robb rode north to a home bathed in betrayal. Cersei plotted daggers within daggers, while wildfire slept in jars awaiting spark. And the last laugh of Renly Baratheon lingered in the memory of those who loved him. A bright echo of summer, fierce and fleeting, now kindling ambitions far more perilous than any single crown. For crowns are forged not of gold alone but of the hopes and hatreds of thousands, and when such metals meet, they melt beneath fires hotter than dragon flame. Fires stoked by grief, by love, by shadows that wear the faces of kings. Such fires awaited the realm. Fires that would test the mettle of every oath sworn and every dream dreamed beneath the long banners of Westeros. For in the Game of Thrones, summer dies screaming, winter marches silent, and only those who master both light and shadow dare call themselves kings. Rain patters over the encampment at Riverrun like a secret too weary to raise its voice. Thin wisps of mist coil from riverbanks where reeds bow beneath the drizzle, offering small mutters to the water that slips past with iron-gray resolve. Inside a sagging canopy, Davos Seaworth kneels before a travel chest, fingers fumbling with leather straps slick from damp. He draws the lid wide, lifts free a bundle of parchment sealed with blue wax, Stannis' orders for the fleet, and tucks the packet beneath his doublet as though hiding a hot coal. He stands, straightening against the ache in his knees, and steps into darkness broken only by lanterns swinging in gusts that smell of wet straw and cold iron. Across a makeshift quadrangle churned into mud, Stannis Baratheon studies a map lashed to trestles. Torchlight stutters animating rivers like serpents that writhe between sigils pushed on iron nails, a dire wolf of gray, a stag of black, a lion bleeding crimson where Tywin's encampment once burned before retreat. Stannis' jaw is set as though smith-hammered. Catelyn Stark stands opposite with arms folded, hair tugged by riverwind. Between them Robb Stark leans in, pressing a gloved thumb upon the trident's southern bend. The Karstark outriders returned at first light, Robb says, voice low but steady. Lannister carriages limp west toward the Gold Road. They left behind wounded, wagons, 3 trebuchets too damaged to move. His breath fogs a heartbeat, then vanishes. We can strike within a fortnight. Davos stops at the canvas flap, listening. Stannis rakes calloused knuckles across stubble grizzled more white than dark. A fortnight wastes advantage, he mutters. Tywin will bury his dead and hire twice the swords. We march in 7 days, less if Levy from Cracklaw arrives. Robb's gaze flicks to the map's northern edge where iron-born axes loom unseen. 7 days cost Winterfell's walls, he says. My home burns now, I cannot trade stone for southern glory. Winterfell is memory if the lion prevails, Stannis counters, eyes sharp. Slay the beast, then mend the north. Catelyn intercepts with a palm pressed on map's damp hide. We hold alliance by respecting each other's wounds. King Stannis, the north bled to stand here. Grant grace to stem its flow. She softens voice. Fight soon, but not so soon, we war at half-strength. Torch sputters outside, thunder rolls distant. Stannis studies Catelyn's face, the lines of grief welded by will, then turns to Davos hovering shy of entry. What says the sea, old friend? Davos steps forward, rain pearled upon his cloak. The fleet lies ready, my lord, though winter tides fight every oar. If we launch upriver in 7 days, Blackwater's swell may smash shallops before scorpions even notch bolts. He pauses. Better 10 days, with moon in second quarter. Winds shift northwesterly, sails will fill. Silence folds around them. At last Stannis nods once, slow as grudging dawn. 10 then. He flicks robe aside, stabbing finger on map at King's Landing. We ride day 8, the fleet meets us at the mouth 2 days after. He gathers figurines, wolf and stag, and aligns them shoulder to shoulder against lion and rose now affixed on hill of Rhaenys. And we split the beast's belly wide. Robb inclines head, acceptance wrapped in caution. Catelyn exhales relief through clenched teeth. That same night inside Riverrun Keep, Maester Vyman paces a corridor lined with rusting suits of Tully armor. He clutches a candle, wax tears spattering floor. His slippered feet halt before a cedar door barred by 2 Bolton guards in flayed man cloaks. One guard doffs helm, revealing youth's scarcely grown whiskers, the other stares blankly, eyes like river ice. Vyman clears his throat. My lord requests audience with Lady Stark, he says. The older guard sniffs. Lady Stark rests. Orders. Orders change when ravens speak of sons alive. Vyman brandishes parchment-bearing sigil of a broken tower over blue water, the Manderleys. Word from White Harbor, Ser Roderick Castle retook Winterfell. Bran and Rickon flee north but live. Relief trembles his voice. Let me pass. The younger guard shifts, sympathy flickering. The elder remains granite until footfalls echo. Roose Bolton approaches, pale face severe above blood-red surcoat. Candles bright for midnight, maester. Vyman straightens. Good news belongs swift. Bolton's lips curve faint. Indeed, I shall bear it. Return to Rookery. He gestures, guards slide door open enough for Roose alone. Vyman hesitates, but Bolton's gaze brooks no contest. Maester withdraws, leaving candle glow to fade behind armor husks. Inside, Catelyn sits at desk penning a letter to her girls still lost. She looks up, quill-arrested. Bolton inclines head, delivering news with measured diction. Her hand flies to mouth. Ink splashes. Tears spring. She clasps scrap of cloth bearing direwolf embroidered by Arya years ago. My boys, thank the gods. Bolton offers linen. In that moment, Catelyn sees kindness in flayed man Lord's eyes, and gratitude mists her reason long enough she misses how his fingers linger upon parchment from White Harbor. How he folds it before handing over, creasing line that mentions Theon's escape to Pike. Along the coast south of Crackclaw Point, Melisandre kneels in an abandoned sept, roof half collapsed. Moonlight pools through broken shingles onto flagstones defiled by moss. She paints glyphs with ash and river mud, mixing with a vial of wildfire stolen weeks past. Over coals she reheats jar until green tongues flicker. Her voice is thin wind. Night is dark, full of terrors, and I am its bride. She lifts obsidian shard, slices palm, and crimson drops hiss in green flame. Smoke rises, twisting into antlered silhouette before dispersing among rafters. Melisandre closes eyes. The fire shows stag and wolf entwined, a sort of mourning wrapped in ice. But the lion's roar deafens. We feed flame more blood. She binds hand, gathers jar, and departs by water door where rowboat waits. A single gull cries as she pushes into channel, rowing towards sea where tide's pulse answers her heartbeat. 10 days pass swift as arrows for some, thick as tallow for others. Robb marches north with half his host. The tumblestones fords churn, delaying column. Scouts talk of Bolton men lingering too near baggage wagons, but chaos of wheels stuck in mud hides small treasons. Catelyn rides with Robb a league before parting. She returns to Riverrun, trusting her son to honor and direwolf. In the south camp, Stannis drills foot in rain. Pike thrust, shield wall, advance 3 strides, brace. Davos inspects ships, orders decks scrubbed of tar lumps that might spark wildfire. Soldiers joke the Onion Knight fears soup cauldron more than sword. He laughs, says better bruised than boiled. Arya Stark, disguised as boy cupbearer in service to Roose's steward, arrives at Riverrun Gate with wagon of root vegetables. She glimpses banners she once traced in Maester Luwin's book. Heart surges, but memory of Harrenhal's horrors steals her. She slips through kitchens, a mouse among cleavers, ears open for word of her mother. Inside Great Hall that evening, Arya serves trenchers to lords dining on stewed river fish. She sees Catelyn across hall, shoulders squared yet weariness in lines about her eyes. Arya's breath catches, tears threaten, but she forces calm. Too many knives between them. She returns to pantry, whispers prayer to the old gods, and vows to find path to her mother once floors empty. The floors never empty, Bolton men prowl. One, tall with moles, corners her, demands wine for his lord. Arya nods, retrieving pitcher. She passes Catelyn's table as Bolton approaches, bowing. They exchange hushed words. Arya strains to catch, talk of Winterfell regained, of Fry levies delayed, of second strike before the lion recovers. Bolton's eyes glint. Arya retreats, fear-twisting. She does not sleep, imagining needle in hand, whispering names. Joffrey, Cersei, Eileen, Polliver, new names forming. Bolton. Stannis' host reaches the mouth of Blackwater beneath sky of hammered lead. Galleys glide upriver in Spearhead, Davos's flagship Fury leading, banks lined with bare willows. Scouts report, Lannister fleet cut to half, many burned at moorings after Tyrell grain barges displaced them. City gates hold banners of Stagan rows, ramparts crewed by gold cloaks again wearing lion on cloaks after secret edict from Cersei, Loras's men relegated to granaries and septs. On riverbank south of Mudgate, Stannis arrays catapults. His men unload iron pots of pitch, not wildfire. Archers string longbows waxed against rain. The smell of damp rope and fear rises. At noon, horns sound from city. High Septon conducts public prayer for peace. Bells toll. Under their peal, Cersei meets Loras in Tower of the Hand. She offers goblet. He refuses. She smiles. "You trust me little." "I trust grief less," he says. "Grief makes fools of us. Then let us be wise." She proposes joint sortie to treat with Stannis, secure safe corridors for refugees. Loras almost relents, until subtle laugh behind tapestry reveals Qyburn stepping out, eyes glittering. He carries scroll stamped with lion. Loras reads vow of Tyrell fealty to Iron Throne if Stannis slain. Rage flares. He storms out, suspicion rekindled. Cersei watches him leave, then dips quill in ink scented of lilac. "Bring me that cell's word, Captain. It is time to water roses with blood." Dusk bleeds along river like slow-drawn blade. Stannis stands aboard Fury's prow, surcoat snapping. King's Landing sprawls ahead, lights flaring within windows, shadows thick under towers. He lifts sword, tip fracturing last daylight. Flagships behind raised lanterns signaling advance. Galleys surge, oars churning. On port side, great chains they left anchored upriver earlier now pulled by work barges to seal Lannister escape. Davos shouts orders, rigging creaks. Archers notch. But as first volley flies, a thunderclap splits sky, green bloom erupts upon mid-river where floating platform drifts under current. Wildfire column towers engulfing 3 forward galleys. Fury's deck staggers beneath shockwave, sailors scream, faces blistering. Stannis thrown to knees. On city wall across water, Cersei watches through spyglass, lips parted. Qyburn beside her holds second torch but she stays his hand. "One spark enough to start legend," she murmurs. "Let gods weigh the rest." Davos rallies crew, orders ships veer from burning slick creeping across river. Wind shifts, drives toxic pall toward city. Gold cloaks on wharf cough, retreat. On southern bank Stannis's catapults loose. Stones smash ramparts, yet gates hold. Stormlanders wade across shallows dragging siege ladders. Lannister archers answer. At river mouth Davos spies low silhouette skimming waves Melisandre's rowboat. She stands, robes billowing, ruby blazing, jar aloft. Before Fury can maneuver, she hurls second jar into updraft. It arcs, lands on deck of Storm's Song, flagship of secondary line. Explosion blossoms, sending burning timbers raining. Melisandre turns, arms raised to moonlight and leaps into consuming fire. Flames silhouette her a moment, then engulf. Davos's men gape, awed and sickened. Fury sails through drifts of ash and severed hands. Stannis boards riverbank where ladders buckle under boiling pitch poured by defenders. He drives sword into gatehouse door, urging rams. Amid screams he glimpses a tall knight in silver-edged armor ordering counterfire, Loras. Their eyes meet above chasm of betrayal and grief. "Traitor!" Loras cries. "Justice!" Stannis answers. Arrow grazes his helm. Blood trickles. Inside city, Marjorie orders infirmaries thrown open. Tyrell surgeons aiding any wounded regardless of banner. Some gold cloaks smirk that Pretty Rose treats traitors. Others whisper queen of love and mercy. At September of Baelor Lady Olenna listens to bells toll warning. She stands before Renly's coffin draped in stag and rose, fingers tracing antler motif. Outside, thunder of siege pulsing like heart. She turns to her guards. "Tell my granddaughter, feed every mouth tonight. We shall not rule ashes." Her eyes hard. "And fetch me little finger." Night deepens. Siege lines roar. Chains across river snap. Davos cut them to funnel city galleys into drift of burning slick. But Lannister ships already scuttled to block channel. Fury anchors. Davos leads Marines scaling sea tower. On parapet he grapples with iron-masked Sellsword. Blades clatter. He rams broken finger stubs into foe's throat, man falls. Stannis breaches King's Gate at midnight. Stormlanders surge, gold cloaks fall back. In courtyard he meets Ser Balon Swan, guard captain once loyal to Renly. They parry among corpses. Swan yields, kneeling. Stannis orders him rise and command watching King's name. Swan hesitates but nods, city heart sways. Yet within Red Keep, Cersei retreats into Maegor's tunnels with Tommen, leaving Joffrey on battlements clutching crossbow. He looses bolt at Stormlanders, misses, screams orders. Qyburn appears, whispering counsel. They vanish downward. Loras leads Sally from Dragon Gate, flanking Stannis' column. Rain begins, hissing on wildfire patches, extinguishing some. Mud turns crimson. Loras' charge splits Stormlanders, Stannis countercharges. For one instant amidst whirling torches, Loras and Stannis stand blade to blade. Loras' eyes blaze with Renly's memory, Stannis' with duty's flame. They trade ferocious strokes. Steel sparks. Stannis batters a side shield, pommel slams Loras' helm. Night falls to knee, stag banner swirls, moment decides. But arrow whistles, loosed by stray archers, sinks in Stannis' thigh. He falters, Loras lunges, drives sword through greave into flesh. Thunder cracks, flood of men surges between, tearing them apart. Stannis carried by guards back to lines. Loras tries to pursue, but Tyrell's sergeants pull him away. Wound on his helm bleeds into eyes. Battle devolves, pockets of fighting, fires snuffed by rain, cries drowned by thunder. By dawn, both sides bleed, neither triumph. City gates partly held, partly broken. Blackwater churns with charred hulks. Stannis lies in field tent on straw, leg bound tight, Davos at bedside. Maester Pylus administers Poppy. Stannis grips Davos' wrist. Hold line, dawn comes again. Words slur. Davos nods, hides dread. Within city, Loras slumps against Sep column, helm removed, brow split. Marjorie presses cloth to wound. She pleads, end this. Parley. Loras grips her wrist, voice raw, I saw Renly's killer in his eyes. I will not yield. Olenna steps forward. Then channel vengeance to crown fit for roses. Bloody soil grows richest flowers. She gestures to Littlefinger behind. Show him path. Baelish unfurls proposal, marry Marjorie to Joffrey immediately, unite armies, outflank Stannis. Loras recoils. Renly's throne stolen by boy monster? Olenna taps Cain. Renly's dream was peace, not throne. Peace grown by marriage or buried beneath graves. Choose. Loras wavers, tears mixing with rain. At last he nods. 2 days of stalemate grind men to bone gristle. Supplies dwindle, wounded groan. Sussy emerges, parades through streets with Joffrey and Marjorie newly wed by hurried septon. Crowds murmur, some cheer Grain Queen, some spit at Lion Boy. Littlefinger rides under white flag to Stannis line, bearing offer, withdraw beyond Rose Road, renounce claim, be named Lord of Storm's End and hand to King Joffrey in recompense. Davos reads letter, laughs bitter. Stannis rips scroll, commands final assault. That night Davos plots with Ser Balon Swan now commanding watch. Swan secretly despises Joffrey's cruelty. They conspire. Open Mudgate at Moon's Peak. Let Stannis strike inside. Take Red Keep. Force deposition. Risk monstrous, but hope of ending slaughter draws them. Yet Arya, still kitchen shadow, overhears Bolton men relaying to Fry spy same plan, intending to betray at last moment and claim reward from Lion Queen. Arya slips through corridors, seeking mother. Guards heavy. She darts into storeroom, finds bundle of rosemary, stuffs it inside shirt to mask fierce stink. She climbs postern stair. On rampart above gate she finds Catelyn, summoned by Balon earlier to observe sign of peace. Rain clears, moon pale. Arya steps from shadow. Catelyn turns, gasps, drops lantern. Mother and daughter embrace, tears silent. Arya breathless relays betrayal. Catelyn stiffens, drags Arya by hand through gallery, seeking Swan. Below, Mudgate grinds open prematurely. Stormlanders surge. Bolton archers atop wall suddenly pivot, loosing volley into allies. Sellswords and lion colors swarm through Sally Port behind Stannis' men. Guest right broken, blood-soaked stone. Swan realizes too late, tries to close gate, mechanism jammed by chains cut earlier. Chaos. Davos enters gatehouse, sees horror, Stormlanders massacred by supposed friends. He bellows retreat, but path clogs with corpses. He fights to reach Stannis still limping on horse. Arrow glances helm, he presses on. Catelyn threads corridors, shouts for Robb's banner men but finds only Bolton spears. Roose appears, blood splatter across cheek. Chaos, my lady, he purrs. Time to choose side. He seizes Arya by arm, knife at her ribs. Catelyn freezes. Roose smiles. Walk quietly, give no alarm. He ushers them downward. In courtyard Fowler Sellswords drags Stannis from horse, blade at throat. Davos slays one, rests Stannis free. They stagger toward pier where Fury's launch waits. Fire arrows streak overhead. Davos pushes Stannis aboard, leaps after. Oarsmen pull. Atop battle aim. NTS Loras sees slaughter, roars fury against Bolton treachery, leads knights to stem carnage, discovers too late they have been flanked by kettle black men bribed by Cersei. He duels Osney, wounds him, but others capture Loras, drag him to dungeons. Cersei watches from tower, wine in fist. She whispers all falls into place. But Margaery storms chamber, cloak-drenched. "This is not peace," she cries. Cersei sips. "This is crown." Margaery's eyes darken. Fury slips downriver through fog tinged green from drowned wildfire. Dawn creeps. Stannis, wounded, stares back at city domes. Davos stands beside, hand on tiller. Lost, Stannis whispers. "Not while breath remains," Davos answers. Stannis closes eyes. "We sail to Dragonstone. Gather embers. War begins anew." Davos nods, though heart cracks. Catelyn imprisoned in windowless room with Arya clutched close. Door creaks, Bolton enters with parchment. He forces Catelyn to sign letter proclaiming she and her daughter safe under Lannister protection, urging Robb to yield. She refuses. Bolton shrugs, leaves them hungry. Arya whispers vow to kill him. Catelyn strokes her hair. Hope dims but ember glows, North remembers. In throne room of Red Keep, Joffrey sits gloating, crown askew. Margaery kneels beside, hand in his. Crowd of lords to swear fealty includes Walder Frey's grandson, Bolton officers, Littlefinger. Cersei smiles, but Olenna stands just behind, eyes measuring distance between pillars, guards, chandeliers, counting pieces on board. In dungeons, Loras sings him of Summerhall, voice echoing, each verse softer. Across narrow cell, Melisandre chained, burns fever bright though torches out. She hums line answering his song, words foreign, fire kissed. Above, wildfire still sleeps in unknown jars. Streets still hunger. Winter wind steals down from north, rattling shutters. On that wind rides rumor of dragons across sea, of dead walking beyond wall, of queens who burn cities to build kingdoms. The game resets, but pieces wear fresh cracks. Somewhere in Riverlands a dire wolf howls forlorn, and in its note brood both mourning and promise of vengeance not yet sated. Night swells with possibilities sharp as broken crowns. And as moon flees before dawn, first flakes of early snow drift onto shoulders of sentries atop city walls, melting at once, but each flake a whisper of winter marching while men war for ashes. Iron-gray clouds scud low over the narrow sea as the battered galley Fury limped toward the volcanic cliffs of Dragonstone, her timbers creaking like an old man's joints. Her rigging hung with ragged remnants of Stormland banners scorched in the Blackwater inferno. Gulls wheeled overhead, screaming laughter at the wreckage of men's hopes. Davos Seaworth stood at the prow, swollen tides slapping barnacled hull below his boots, eyes fixed on the forbidding walls of the old Targaryen fortress. He had sailed into these black waters 1,000 times, but never with a king half delirious from fever on a pallet behind him and a burden of failure heavier than the sea itself on his shoulders. The docks lay almost deserted save for a few lanterns bobbing atop pilings. No cheers greeted Fury's return, word of the debacle had flown ahead on swift-winged ravens. When the gangway thudded against worn planks, Davos oversaw the silent offloading of wounded, watching Stannis' litter borne toward the ancient Seagate Arch. The king's eyes fluttered open briefly, he muttered something about duty being a blade you swing until only hilt remains, then slipped back into fever dream. Behind the litter tramped the survivors, gaunt knights in dented helms, archers with bandaged fingers, oarsmen haunted by green fire still flickering in memory. Maester Pylus hurried down the jetty with lantern swinging, lips pressed tight at the sight. As Stannis disappeared into the keep, Davos strode after, boots echoing along the basalt tunnel until he reached a small octagonal chamber lit by braziers. There the maester's assistants stripped the king's ruined armor. Breastplate buckled, rents leaking blood through hastily bound padding. The wound in Stannis' thigh had begun to fester. Crimson streaks crept along fever-hot flesh. Pylus lanced, leeched, muttered soft prayers. Stannis bore it in grim silence until unconsciousness claimed him. When Davos emerged hours later, dawn threatened the horizon. Ashen light revealed charred splinters still trapped in his beard. He scraped them free absently while climbing the winding stairs to the chamber of the painted table, where sailors' boots had scuffed the outlying reaches of Westeros thin as parchment. The room was empty save for a single candle guttering near the Stormlands. Davos traced its flicker across the painted waves, mind drifting to suns roasted alive by wildfire mere yards from his reach. Mathos' smile flashed unbidden. Grief sucked breath from his lungs. He closed eyes, cycling prayer to the mother, then forced himself to steady. Behind him footsteps padded soft. Ser Andrew Estermont, distant Baratheon cousin, spared the blade at Blackwater, paused by the door. "The men ask what banners we fly now," he said. "Morals no sturdier than that mast we lost to flame." "We fly Baratheon Black, crowned stag," Davos answered, although the words tasted hollow. "And we fly it until King Stannis says otherwise." "King Joffrey's coin buys tongues faster than fever rots flesh," Estermont warned. "Rumor claims Tyrell roses now bloom all the way to the Blackwater's mouth. And there are whispers that Boy King's wedding bed already swarms with heirs." "Rumor also said Renly's ghost rose from the fire and slew Stannis in a dream," Davos murmured. "See how that turned." His shoulders sagged. He turned. "We lost this battle, not our cause. Hold firm till I speak to the king." Estermont's nod betrayed little faith, but he withdrew. 3 days passed in fitful limbo. Cold autumn winds banged shutters while Dragonmont belched occasional plumes of sulfur that hung over courtyard like ill omens. The maester reported fluctuations of fever. Some nights Stannis thrashed, raving names Davos scarcely recognized. Other nights he lay still as stone. Davos visited each dusk, bringing murmured reports of troop counts, grain stores, the price of salt cod. Sometimes the king's eyelids fluttered, but he spoke no command. On the fourth twilight a raven arrived from the wall. Wings rhymed with frost far earlier than any maester deemed natural. Its message, penned in terse, crabbed script, begged aid against terrors beyond the shivering sea. White shadows walking, corpses animated, great packs of direwolves howling under unfamiliar stars. Davos read it twice, pulse quickening. The ancient enemies stirring while Southron kings sharpened daggers for each other. Some cruel mocking of gods. He carried the parchment to Stannis's bedside. The king's fever had broken at last. Sweat plastered hair to temples, but eyes rekindled with iron resolve. Davos eased onto stool, reading Raven's plea aloud. Stannis listened, chest heaving. When silence settled, he spoke, voice raw. "While Cersei beds roses, the realm's true winter approaches. The cold does not care whose sigil flaps over keep." Davos ventured, "Then we answer this call?" Stannis tried to sit, hissed as stitched thigh pulled taut. "We will sail north with what ships remain. Leave throne uncontested?" Stannis's jaw flexed. "I contested and failed. The gods, or chance, have shown where my duty lies now." He met Davos's gaze. "Gather captains, provision for long voyage, and send ravens to Eastwatch that the king they denied will stand his watch where others break." Hundreds of leagues to the west a hush hung over the twins of Frybridges. Nights glimmered with early frost, campfires blinking like watchful eyes along riverbanks. Inside Lord Walder's drafty solar Bolton riders delivered Catelyn's forged letter signed under duress, though bearing cunning facsimile of her hand. Walder cackled, demanded more silver for secrecy, but acquiesced to Roose Bolton's scheme, hold the Stark matriarch until Robb bent knee. Bolton smiled thinly, signed promissory notes. In cellars below Riverrun, Catelyn cradled Arya, whispering northern lullabies to stave despair. Arya remained alert, counting guard steps, mapping door hinges. One afternoon, rattling chains signaled visitor. Ser Simon Vance, once sworn to Tully, slipped in with heel of bread and key smuggled in bandage around his wrist. He whispered fierce apology, phrase threatened to bleed his kin. Arya's eyes burned, but Catelyn touched his sleeve. "Live to make true amends," she said. He bowed, vanished. Night deepened. Lightning glimmered far off. When guards dozed, Arya produced key and lock sprang. They crept corridors damp with seep. Twice they froze as boots clacked beyond archways, but Arya's cat-like memory of Harrenhal tunnels served. She guided Mother through kitchens, up winding stair, onto battlements slick with dew. Wind cut biting, torches guttered. Atop Crenel they crawled along narrow ledge toward postern turret where a rope dangled used by Raven's keeper. Arya scaled first, agile as shadow, knelt to help Catelyn. Shouts erupted behind, guard spotted emptiness of cell. Bolton horns wailed. Arrow hissed past, twanging stone. Arya shimmied down rope outside wall, Catelyn followed slower, fingers numb. At base they plunged into reeds, crossed moat chest deep. Dark river beyond whispered freedom. On far bank, a stable boy loyal to Blackfish waited with 2 ponies. Brynden had suspected Roost's duplicity and left contingency. Without word, Catelyn and Arya mounted, riding into night for the neck, tears chilled on cheeks but hopes burst. King's Landing awoke each dawn to contradictory smells. The sweet yeast of free bread kitchens funded by Tyrell generosity blended with acrid tang of corpses still hauled from alleys gnarled by siege. Marjorie walked among beggars outside the Great September, offering smiles, comfort, scarfing infants with blankets of Tyrell green. Whisperers already called her the realm's delight, though others muttered she cast net of silk to strangle city in thorny vines. In dank red keep cell Loras Tyrell languished, wrists raw from manacles but not broken. Each dawn a jailer found him practicing footwork within the limits of chains, muscling lithe legs to keep hatred hot. One night iron rasped, door slid open. Lady Olenna stepped inside, small lantern gilding wrinkles into sharp lines. She produced key, freed his wrists. "Do not speak," she hissed. "We play civility while daggers sharpen." She handed parchment. Renly's blade, the only evidence shadow left, secreted to Highgarden smiths, grown warm again. Scholars say obsidian drinks magic. Loras unrolled charcoal rubbing of stag brand burnt into blade's tang, eyes fierce. Olenna pressed dagger into his hand. "Joffrey thinks you broken. Wear his arrogance like armor. Soon we choose moment to shear lion's mane." She kissed his cheek, left us silently. Northward the infantry of Robb Stark slogged through sodden fields toward Moat Cailin. Rain painted cloaks to spines, yet spirits lifted by rumors of Winterfell regained. Robb rode at Column's head with great John roaring songs, but Maester Martin's raven had delivered grim afterward. Theon Greyjoy likely fled Iron Islands, and Winterfell's walls charred by vengeful Ireborn. The king in the north steeled face. At night he knelt alone before fire, stroking Grey Wind's shaggy head, vowing to rebuild stone and bone alike. Not all in his camp matched resolve. Lord Karstark's grief for his slain sons festered. He drank sour ale, glared at Frey envoys whispering demands for young Queen Roslyn's bridebed. When scouting party returned bearing news of Catelyn's escape and Bolton treachery, tents erupted in howls. Karstark demanded Bolton's head, Frey's muttered about misunderstandings. Robb convened war council. Lightning turned sky milkwhite, thunder drowning oaths. "We ride on Dreadfort," Karstark snarled. "Pay bolts with flay." Robb slammed fist on table. "We rescue my mother first." Bolton betrayed guest right. "But strike must be swift, eh?" Frey emissary objected. "Lord Walder holds Catelyn safe for negotiation, not harm." Ice blue glare from Robb silenced him. Walder's notion of safe changes with coin. The young king pivoted to Blackfish, arrived with vanguard after slip through secret ways. Brynden confirmed Catelyn's flight. He guessed she would attempt crossing Neck via Marsh Road known only to Crannogmen. Robb planned intercept, send outriders to guide. Then Dreadfort's retribution. But ravens from White Harbor brought news of ships. Stannis' fleet northbound, banner of flaming heart over Stag. Bluff or purpose unknown. Robb puzzled. Why would Baratheon sail past war's heartland? On deck of storm which Davos inhaled brine-laced gale as masts groaned under reefed sails. Fleet carved through ghost of shivering sea, waters steel gray. Sailors clad in furs gaped at drifting ice already thick enough to clink against hull sides in early autumn. At stern Stannis, wrapped in heavy black cloak, studied horizon where rippling curtain of shimmering green. The aurora danced unnatural brilliance. Dying ice flows emerald like spectral wildfire. "We sail into sorcery again," Davos muttered, shuddering. "The world is half sorcery, half steel," Stannis replied. "Men wield both or perish." Hours later, Eastwatch's stockade hove into view, torches flickering behind ramparts caked in rime. Ranger horns signaled caution. When Baratheon banners unfurled, gate creaked open, revealing lean men with haunted eyes. Lord Commander Jeor Mormont himself greeted them, beard bristling with frost. "Thought only crows flew this far," he grunted. "Didn't expect kings." "I come to hold the wall where others neglect," Stannis declared. Mormont's gaze flicked to battered banners. "Then best grip tight. Night grows hungry." Inside drafty hall Samwell Tarly trembled, recounting spectators of undead wights, of horns blown thrice, of white walkers glimpsed astride dead horses. Stannis listened, expression unmoved. He detailed plan. Baratheon fleet would blockade Eastwatch, deliver supplies, and transport any northern levies willing to man the wall. Davos would sail to White Harbor seeking alliance with Manderley, promising justice for slain Stark sons and pardon for harboring royal fleet. Over whiskey-spiked broth, Mormont sighed. I asked kings for men, not politics. Politics feed swords, Stannis said. Feed the realm, it may survive winter. In King's Landing, the first snowflake that remained upon paving stone settled outside the street of flour like anxious spy. Small folk paused, glanced skyward. Another flake alighted, then another. Children squealed delight. Bakers muttered at ovens that devoured fuel too swift already. Cersei watched from window, thumb stroking stem of goblet. Snow in autumn seldom reached crownlands. She sensed omen, took it as sign of her reign ascending. White canvas to paint crimson. Behind, Pycelle coughed, presenting list of debts. Tyrell loans, Braavosi interest, repairs to galleys. She waved him away, turning to Qyburn. Have you found where Stannis hides that red witch? Last report places her near the wall, my queen. Pit her flame against snows, sea which burns. She smirked. Meanwhile we secure south. She summoned council, ordering fortifications along Rose Road, levies from Westerlands, betrothal of Myrcella to Martell heir renegotiated. Littlefinger applauded. Varys raised a brow under perfumed powder. Olenna Tyrell declined invitation. Instead, she met secretly with Varys in abandoned manse. She produced list of Cersei's secret cells word payments. Varys countered with rumor of Mad King's wildfire troves still hidden. They bartered secrets like coin, weaving alliance of necessity. Restrain lioness before she scorched gardens to salt. Loras, freed by grandmother's influence but bound by oath of good conduct, roamed silent corridors of Great September at dusk, dagger concealed within sleeve. He visited Renly's coffin, kneeling before polished weirwood effigy. A whisper echoed footsteps. He rose, blade ready. A woman stepped into lantern nave. Melisandre, red gown torn, escorted by kettle-black guard. Her eyes burned unnatural amber. Shadow Prince, she murmured, gaze pinning him. Flame showed me your hatred, hot enough to birth new darkness. Loras's grip tightened. You slew him. Shadow slew. I merely opened door. She smiled. Your grief invites more shadows. Serve Lord of Light, I give you vengeance. He lunged, guard caught wrist, but Melisandre only laughed, let them drag her deeper into cells. Her laughter lingered long after iron door slammed. On a marsh path lit by foxfire, Catelyn and Arya trudged knee-deep through peat water, guided by reed boat rowed by Mira Reed and her silent brother Jojen. Crannogman hospitality proved humble but fierce. They offered eel stew, riddle-laden tales of green seers. Jojen spoke of Bran dreaming of three-eyed corvid alive beyond ashes of Winterfell. Catelyn grasped at belief her crippled son survived Char Tyr's salted stew. Next dawn they paddled across glassy pool to Greywater Watch Castle that moved with tides of mud. Their Howland Reed greeted Catelyn, reaffirming oath to Stark name, promising safe escort north. Yet he warned, ravens tell of Fry wedding feast planned at Twins where King's banners expected, Walder may yet seek red payment. Far away Robb's outriders captured Fry courier bearing cryptic invitation heavy with honeyed words yet sickly smell. Blackfish urged caution, Karstark thirsted for battle, Edmure swayed by dream of peace. Robb weighed mother's unknown fate, Winterfell's embers, Bolton's betrayal. He sent Raven, accepted wedding guest right but demanded hostages for safety. Walder agreed too readily, some whispered. At the wall Stannis inspected defenses, browstone. Ramparts bowed under hoarfrost, Black brothers patched gaps with driftwood and frozen mud. Baratheon knights drilled them anew, though many muttered unsuited to wall walking. Gendry Waters, bastard smith rescued months ago, hammered new spearheads, his arm knotted with muscle. Stannis visited Forge, studied youth's face, so like Robert and in rare softness promised legitimation should duty endure. Gendry flushed, swung hammer with doubled vigor. Rangers returned from haunted forest bringing 3 more corpses that refused to burn properly. Maester Aemon, voice thin as spider silk, told Davos of prophecy long locked in hidden library, prince born of smoke and salt, wielding Lightbringer to halt endless night. Davos listened wary, he had heard Melisandre's twisted version near fires. When Aemon spoke of dragons stirring, Davos shivered. News indeed arrived of Daenerys Targaryen capturing Cartha's ruling council, sailing with Unsullied across Summer Sea toward Slaver's Bay. Dragons birthed from funeral pyre now larger than warhorses. Rumor claimed she taught them to breathe on command. Ravens bearing such tidings caused many at court to scoff, but not Stannis. He considered flames, measured distance. "We fight with what realm grants," he told Davos on blizzard-stung battlements. "But if dragons return, kings become footnotes. Shall we seek pact?" Davos asked. "Or slay rival before her wings cast shadow on wall?" Stannis's eyes glittered hard as rime. Winter's bite sharpened by week. First major snowfall blanketed kings landing in muffling hush. Children crafted lopsided white lions, lobbing snowballs at each other between charred remnants of siege towers. Bakers cursed dying ovens. Wood merchants grew fat. One crisp morn, L. Orys Tyrell stood upon gallery overlooking training yard where new Queen's Guard drilled. He paced restlessly until Varys's svelte figure emerged, offering scroll sealed with mockingbird wax. Within lay proof of kettle black bribes to frame Loras for plot against Joffrey. Varys whispered of quiet corridor where one might reach royal bedchamber unseen. Loras's rage flared, but Olenna's warning echoed. Channel vengeance into bloom, not blade. He pocketed scroll, walked away. That night Joffrey strutted through banquets celebrating first snowfall, flinging handfuls of sugar hail at courtiers, crowing laughter. Margaery bent ear, coaxing him toward dais where orphans sang carol to mother. Joff's scowl softened, city noted, cheers rose. Yet Cersei's glare bored into Tyrell Queen, jealousy churning. After feast, Cersei met Qyburn in black cells, where Melisandre knelt surrounded by glyphs scorched into stone though no fire touched them. The Red Woman raised head. "Your son Starwain's queen?" "I can fan flame." Cersei folded arms. "You preach fire but sow ghosts. Give me weapon to hold roses in check." Melisandre smiled. "Bring me blood of lion and stag mingled. I gift shadow unchained." Cersei weighed words, mind racing to bastard boy rumor she once denied. On frostbitten Tor path near Moat Cailin, Catelyn and Arya encountered northern outriders sent by Robb. Gray-cloaked men who lifted mother and daughter into saddle lines. Joy flickered but caution reined them. Road to twins yet to tread. Howland Reed provided stone-eye tokens said to confuse southern gaze. They rode under dusk's cloak. At Dreadfort, Roose Bolton received Walder's raven. Wedding set for first month of winter. He penned reply pledging presents with gifts. Then he visited secret chamber where flayed skin of Stormlander night dried on rack. He traced finger along crimson edge, whispered ancient words of Dreadfort creed. Our blades are sharp, plans unfurled like entrails. His bastard Ramsay returned bearing sack of severed Stark outrider thumbs, offering father trophy. Roose studied gruesome prize, mused on necessity of terror. He ordered Ramsay to ready horsemen for march south. Ashes settled over Riverrun under sparse garrison following Bolton exodus. Blackfish gathered loyal river lords Malister, Piper, Vance to retake corridors. They scoured corridors for Frey spies, shored walls, repaired sluice gates. In hidden loft Blackfish discovered leftover bolts dipped in green resin smelling faintly of wildfire, evidence of Bolton's sabotage. He sealed them in oak chest, sent messenger Hawk to Robb about this darker treachery. In White Harbor Davos knelt before Lord Wyman Manderly, a corpulent man yet sharp-eyed. Court smelled of lemon crust and roasted hare. Davos presented parchment under King's seal promising justice for Stark wrongs, pardon for harboring Baratheon ships, elevation of Manderly vassals to South Sea posts. Manderly listened behind steepled fingers, sighing after each clause. North bleeds, he said at length, voice deep as harbor foghorn. And Baratheon promises float like gulls, aloft one breath, gone the next. Davos bared fingers lost to justice, expression earnest. My word holds weight of what remains of hand. Manderly's laughter shook belly rolls. Well spoken, smuggler. He leaned forward. Bring me Catelyn Stark safely returned and fry heads upon pike and Manderly fleet sails to wall. Until then, I wait. Davos inclined in grim understanding. North of the wall, beyond haunted weirwood glades iced in silver, Tormund Giant's bane trudged with column of wildlings, many starved, many frostbitten, led by young king beyond the wall Mance Raider toward Blackstone Causeway of Eastwatch. Rumor reached them of southern king willing to treat, to grant passage south for common fight. Some cried trap, others saw last hope. Ravens carried Mance's message, parley under truce of old gods. Stannis agreed. On windswept plain of gathered bones they met. Stannis in black and red-plated mail, Mance in patchwork furs, both flanked by wary lines. They spoke of white doom deeper than any crown. Terms hashed. Clans furnished spears for wall defense. In return, lands south of Gift offered for winter camps. Mance accepted after long silence, trusting steel in Stannis' eyes. The handshake sealed improbable alliance, though mutters among Night's Watch echoed betrayal. Far to east, on deck of Balerion-sized cog Queen's Mercy, Daenerys Targaryen studied stars. Drogon perched on masthead, wings spread like midnight sails. Regal and Viserion flanked hold, eyes ember-bright. Ships of Unsullied circled, oars beating steady cadence. Jorah Mormont approached, cloak snapping. Wind favors slavers bay by dawn. Daenerys nodded, though gaze lingered west. Every tide carries whispers of Westeros. Do you think they dream of dragons? Some dream of nothing but survival, Khaleesi.
Then I will give them more. She stroked Drogon's scaled snout as he swooped down, locking eyes glowing furnace red. One cold dawn at King's Landing, snow-muffled city so thoroughly one could fancy even Varys' slippers made noise. In Tower of Hand, Littlefinger sat by brazier counting ledger columns, grain, debt, Sellsword pensions. A flick of quill added interest line to Tyrell loan, his pocket. He folded account sealed with mockingbird wax, disguised as order for canal dredging to vanish into labyrinth of bureaucracy. Qyburn arrived bearing glass jar containing still-beating heart of executed thief, grisly reagent for something foul. Littlefinger recoiled, amused. The Queen pursues exotic chemistry, he remarked. The Queen pursues power, Qyburn corrected, eyes alight. Power survives winter. Littlefinger smiled, thinking, so does coin. Beneath September's crypt, Loras prayed with dagger clutched. Footsteps approached, Marjorie cloak dusted snow. She knelt, taking his shaking hands. Brother, we steer realm toward sun, not pyre. Put aside shadow. Loras's jaw clenched. Renly's justice demands flame. Justice may demand patience. She slid scroll from sleeve. Old Town Maester Treatise proving oath of Lord Paramount seat still belong to Highgarden no matter crown's whim. Hold pen instead of blade and we rule legally. Loras closed eyes, surrendered dagger. For now. At Twins preparations for wedding bustled. 1,000 casks of cheap ale arrived. Musicians rehearsed bawdy songs. Walder Frye surveyed with watery grin. Bolton riders erected pavilions sporting flayed men side by side with twin towers. In quiet corners knives were sharpened louder than fiddles. Robb's vanguard approached days later. He carried white banner, trusting guest right. Yet omen ill. Snowflakes danced too soon. Ravens croaked restless. Great John muttered wolves restless. Grey whined snarled at servant smells beyond gate. Refused kennel. Robb forced him to enclosure for ceremony. Inside torchlit hall Walder greeted with oily courtesy, offered bread and salt. Groomsmen exchanged uneasy glances. Table set with roast boar, trout, goat. Reigns of Castamere played by unseen harpers too slow. Night deepened, wine flowed. Walder's daughter Rosalind wept happiness, Edmure beamed, drums thudded. Suddenly crossbows twanged from rafters. Music stopped. Chaos flashed red. But in this telling, Arya Stark and Crannogman scouts had slipped through side postern earlier, warning Robb of treachery. Grey Wind's snarls had triggered memory of Bran's wolf dreams told by Jojen. Robb preempted. At first toast he raised horn, announced thanks to Walder's generosity, and signaled disguised northern soldiers among serving men to disarm Frye archers. Hidden bolts jammed with wax. When Freys tried raising arms, disguised men struck. Hall erupted, yet Stark swordsmen kept Walder's kin at blade's point. Blood still spilled, but treachery failed to bloom full. Robb confronted Walder before dais, Grey Wind bursting from kennel to stand by master. Walder croaked curses, claimed guest rights still binding. Robb countered with evidence, Catelyn's forced letter, Bolton's skinning bolts, wine casks hiding crossbows. He offered Frey's choice, yield capture, submit to trial, or face direwolf. Majority threw down blades, some fought, were cut. Bolton, not present, fled camp toward Dread Fort under storm of arrows. Ramsay covered retreat with torch to doth the Frye tents, but northern outriders chased. Robb freed prisoners, including Catelyn newly arrived disguised among maidservants. Mother and son embraced amid ruin. Arya reunited with Bran's dire wolf dream instilled hope. Story of thwarted red wedding spread, painting Robb as cunning yet merciful. In black cells of King's Landing word of Fry failure stung Cersei. She shattered goblet, shard slitting palm. Rage dripped blood. She stormed halls, commanding kettle blacks to seize Loras again, but roses now bloomed in yard. Tyrell guards stood armed at every stair. Olenna had anticipated, produced royal decree signed by Joffrey granting Tyrell's oversight of city granaries and defensive quarter, ensuring their troops within walls legitimate. Chess match tightened. That night Qyburn presented monstrous creation, mute giant pieced from cadaverous champion, reanimated by alchemy. He named it Ser Robert Strong. Cersei ordered him to join King's Guard, overshadowing Tyrell Knights, intimidation by silent terror. Snowstorms hammered Eastwatch, piling drifts like ships' hulls. Wildling camps south of Wall hammered stakes, built sod huts. Some Black brothers bristled, but Stannis enforced discipline. Wildlings would fight undead or freeze, no man dismissed. Jon Snow, promoted to acting first ranger, mediated scuffles, reminding knights watch their oaths bound them to realm, not crown. One midnight horn blast echoed thrice, enemy beyond gate. Watch scrambled, torches painted night. Out of swirling white stumbled figure garbed in night's watch, black rhymed with frost, Benjen Stark, eyes luminous blue. Jon cried uncle's name, ranger raised hand then collapsed. Maester Aemon pronounced him white slowed by ancient magic in Stark blood. When he stirred with snapping jaws, Jon plunged drag-a-glass dagger into heart. Darkness fled eyes. Jon knelt by body, tears freezing. Stannis watched, face iron, resolved to march beyond wall soon as weather broke to strike White Walkers at source. In Slaver's Bay, Astapor's red bricks shattered under dragon flame. Freed slaves thronged, chanting Mysa. Daenerys carved whip from Krasny's hand, tossed into gutter. Unsullied ranks parted as she strode forward, Drogon's roar shaking marine walls. She seized Harpy banner, cast down. Masters fled, pyramids burned. Across sea, ravens bore news, Varys read in Tower of the Hand, sighed. The dragon stirs soup while we sip snow. Olenna listening murmured, best seasoned soup accordingly. Ramsay Bolton reached Dread Fort through blizzard, father's wrath colder than wind. Roose struck him but then plotted, alliance with Ironborn, joined Euron Crowseye rumored to wield dark sorcery. Ramsay grinned, flaying and drowning both drew screams alike. Robb marched triumphant toward Winterfell, Catelyn advising caution. They found castle gutted but rubble harbored survivors, Maester Luwin dying yet smiling, Osha the wildling caretaker of Rickon, Bran vanished north. Robb swore rebuild, Catelyn prayed for Bran's safety. Northern lords hailed Robb's cunning at Twins, pledged stronger loyalty. Frey's shipped to Bear Island for penance, some hanged. Winterfell reconstruction began, craftsmen shaped stone by torchlight under falling snow. Greywater message arrived, Stannis at wall seeking allies, Robb considered. He marched north with picked guard to parley, leaving Grey Jon to oversee rebuild. As New Year turned, storms blanketed Westeros. Wolves howled coast to coast, ravens flitted heavy with prophecy. In Dragonstone's ancient war room, Davos studied star map as red comet again blazed faint on horizon, a returning omen. Gendry hammered sword with heart-shaped ruby set into hilt, claiming for king he respected not for birth but for will. Stannis strapped it, named it vigilance. He turned to Davos. We ride for Winterfell. There we forge last line of men before dead. And in distance, beyond shivering sea, pale giants marched beneath swirling snow, eyes blue as winter stars, spears of ice glinting, at their head the Night's King lifted blade that sang cold. The war for Iron Throne dwindled before real dawn of darkness, yet still within warm keeps men sharpened words sharper than steel, blind to breath frosting world's throat. Such was the fragile stand of mortals flanked by dragon's fire and winter's abyss, each heartbeat drumming defiance against shadow. Their stories threaded together like frayed banners in gale, stag and wolf and lion and rose, snapping louder as storm advanced, promising either tapestry of unity or ragged shroud for all.